The Big Show is live and streaming at sportsnet.ca/960. Sportsnet 960, The Fan, Calgary.
All right, welcome to the show on this very busy Thursday afternoon, one of the busiest days I can remember, as we're here for the next 4 hours alongside Will Knowlton, Logan Gordon. My name is Pat Steinberg, live from the iconic Electric and Control Studio. Telecommunications, it's iconic. Contact them today at iconicec.ca. Lots to get to around the league in the next 4 hours, but we kick off the show by saying hello to the newest member of the Calgary Flames as they completed a trade with the Seattle Kraken this morning, acquiring Tyler Pitlick from Seattle in exchange for a 2022 fourth-round pick.
Seattle Kraken legend.
The one-day Seattle member of the Seattle Kraken. Tyler Pitlick joins us on the Atlas Pizza and Sports Bar guest hotline right now. Tyler, appreciate the time. It's got to have been one of the weirdest 24-hour, 48-hour stretches of your career now that we find you as a member of the Calgary Flames. Tell us about the last 24 hours or so.
It's been pretty crazy for sure. A lot of changes, just a lot going through our minds, obviously, with a lot of changes, finding out I was exposed, and then that I was going to be selected, and then that I was going to be traded. So our minds have kind of been everywhere this past 2 days, but we're excited now and looking forward to the new opportunity.
When did you find out or have an idea that you were going to end up in Calgary as opposed to staying in Seattle?
I didn't really know I was going to Calgary per se, but I was told yesterday that I was probably going to be traded and not to get too excited about being selected by the Kraken because I probably wasn't going to be there. So then I obviously wonder where you're going and find out today it's Calgary. So we're excited.
So how do you, I would imagine, an uncertain time, a nerve-wracking time, an exciting time. How do you handle the whole thing? How difficult has it been? And if it has been difficult, how do you kind of keep yourself from going a little crazy?
I don't know. I mean, we're just kind of rolling with it. I think at this point in my career and everything, and my wife's been around my entire career, and we've been through lots of different scenarios, so we're used to kind of just rolling with it and figuring out as we go. So it is what it is, and now we just got to figure out what our next step is. Get to find a place in Calgary now, sell our place here in Scottsdale, so there's a lot to do, but we'll figure it out, and we're looking forward to the new opportunity.
At least you're familiar with Alberta, right? I mean, there's that. You've spent some time in Medicine Hat, Edmonton, so it's not like you're a complete stranger to Calgary per se.
Right, exactly. We're looking forward to it. I mean, we're excited to be back in Canada, into a hockey market, have some snow again. It's going to be, I mean, sounds weird to say, but we're looking forward to the snow and all that stuff. So we're excited.
So how does a guy from Minnesota end up becoming Tigers, Oilers, now Flames, as Will just said? How does a guy from Minnesota become so familiar with the province of Alberta?
I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of worked out that way, and I guess I'm not really sure how it all happened, but I guess it's meant to be, and hopefully it's a good match and it goes well.
So what was your reaction when you found out that you were going to Calgary and the Flames were going to be your new team?
I mean, obviously a lot of initial shock and like whatever, you're worried about family and kids and COVID and all that different stuff goes through your mind, but once I started thinking about my career and how I just think it's going to be a good fit for me, and it's going to be good for me, and I'm going to be able to help the team there in Calgary, and I think it's going to be a really good fit, and I think obviously my family's going to love it as well, and I just think it's going to be good all around. So we're very excited.
Newest Calgary Flames forward Tyler Pitlick with us this afternoon on Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
As you just mentioned, Tyler, of course, COVID's still very much in our lives, so don't necessarily know exactly how next season's going to go, but it's going to go back to an 82-game schedule, going to play again once outside your division, but we just talked about it. You're very familiar with the Flames from your time at Edmonton. How exciting. You're joining that kind of rare company now of guys that have played on both sides of the Battle of Alberta.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to be a little bit goofy being on the other side of it because I was on the other side before, but I mean, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to being a part of that again. It's so fun playing those games and having that rivalry, and I mean, it's going to be fun for sure.
Was trying to go back in your career and look at some connections. My guess is you're not too familiar with anybody on this Flames roster. What do you know about the current members of the Calgary Flames?
I mean, I know Luch from Edmonton, and I mean, that's kind of where it ends, I guess. I don't really know any of the guys personally that I can think of off the top of my head. But, I mean, I know there's a lot of talent there and a lot of good players, and I just hope that I can, bring my energy and compete and just experience and add to it.
Have you heard from Lucic yet?
Not yet, but his wife reached out to my wife and all that stuff, so hopefully that can help with finding a place to live and school and all that sort of stuff, so should be good.
Yeah, see if he's got any houses on his street that are for sale, maybe, hey?
Yeah.
Tell us about yourself as a player, because I think obviously fans would know you from your time at Edmonton, but maybe weren't as focused on you specifically. What kind of player are you, and what are you going to bring to the Calgary Flames, Tyler?
I'm hard-working, north. I just play hard, physical, get on the forecheck. I like to play on the penalty kill and just be solid defensively and chip in as much offensively as I can. So I just think you're going to know what you're going to get from me every night. Just being physical and playing as hard as I can.
What do you know about Daryl Sutter, and what excites you about playing for him?
I don't know a ton, but I know that he likes the hard-working guys, and I think that's going to bode well for me because that's me. I'm going to work hard and bring it every night, so I think that's going to be good for me.
Tyler Pitlick with us, newest Calgary Flames forward on Sportsnet 960 The Fan this afternoon. You talk about being a north-facing guy and a hard-working guy, but last couple of years in Arizona, some really, really heavy defensive responsibility. How much pride do you take in the defensive side of your game?
A lot. I mean, I hate getting scored on. I do not like being on the ice when the other team scores, and I do everything I can to keep that from happening, whether it's blocking a shot or taking a hit to get the puck out of the zone, the little things that sometimes go unnoticed. I pride myself on those things and just doing everything I can to help the team.
When you're taking on really heavy defensive responsibility and you're taking on really good players on the other side, I mean, you take a look at some of the numbers out there defensively and how many times you've been scored on and some of the metrics out there that track these things. You do very, very well. So what goes into being that type of shutdown forward? What makes a good shutdown forward in this league?
Well, I think it's, kind of touched on it before, just like doing the little things. It's blocking shots and getting pucks out of the zone every chance you can and, taking hits to make plays. You just got to, think the game. And, I've been put in the situation to be that guy. You're usually with a good two-way centerman that definitely makes things easier. And, if you're on that line to shut other teams down, it's a lot of fun, and hopefully you're with two other guys that take pride in that as well, and just want to shut the other team down. And if you come out with a goal, it's a win.
You're listed as a center. NHL lists you as a center, but you've played predominantly on the wing, on the right wing. Is center still an option for you, or have you pretty much settled into being a winger at this point?
I mean, I don't want to take anything off the table. I think I could play center if I needed to, but I've been mostly a wing. I mean, since college, junior, the whole time I've really been a wing. So I think I'm predominantly a winger, and yeah. Okay.
Well, what's next for you? Like you talked, you need to buy a house. You need to figure out what's happening in Scottsdale. You've got a lot ahead of you in the next few weeks. Just I guess take us through what the summer has planned and what you had planned prior to this news hitting you earlier today.
I mean, we planned on just staying here for the summer and training here and skating here and doing all that stuff. But, that could all change pretty quick. So I think, obviously, we got to sell this place. We got to find a place to rent in Calgary and figure out, all sorts of different things, what we're going to do with our furniture here, if we want to bring it or ship it home to Minnesota, or there's a whole lot of stuff that's kind of going to go into it. But, it's going to be a little stressful for a little bit, but overall we're excited and looking forward to it.
Time at the golf course is probably taken out of the picture now, huh?
Yeah, there won't be a ton of that. I'll have to try and find some time. But...
Nowhere to golf in Scottsdale. There's just a look at kind of the things we don't always talk about when a guy gets traded. There is a lot to do, and I know it's going to be a really busy and hectic time for you coming up, Tyler. Really appreciate you spending some time with us this afternoon. Can't wait to see you in Calgary in a couple of months, and good luck the rest of the summer. Thanks so much for doing this today.
Thank you. No problem.
It's Tyler Pitlick, the newest member of the Calgary Flames, acquired from the Seattle Kraken via the Arizona Coyotes earlier today. A fourth-round pick in 2022 going the other way. He joined us on the Atlas Pizza and Sports Bar guest hotline. Make it a great night. Choose from pizza and wings, pasta and seafood, or steaks and ribs. Order now through DoorDash or dine in at 6060 Memorial Drive Northeast. So the way it has gone for Tyler was a member of the Arizona Coyotes the last couple of years.
Just one.
Right, just the 1 year. Gets selected by, he was on a 2-year contract, sorry. So he gets selected by the Seattle Kraken yesterday. And then we all had this inkling that Seattle was going to flip him. That was something that we all expected going
so did
back
he,
to about
apparently.
24 hours ago. He knew he was going somewhere, and then today it was confirmed that it was indeed the Calgary Flames and a fourth-round pick. That is, you sign a 2-year contract, and look, everybody signs up for this in the NHL. You're a millionaire. You're making multi-millions. He's at a $1.75 million cap hit. So that goes along with the job and the vocation that you choose. But it doesn't change the fact that it's got to be a little stressful. Didn't know what was happening for 24 hours or so. And now all of a sudden he's got a lot to figure out. He bought a house in Scottsdale, so on and so forth. It's been an interesting last 24, 48 hours. Yeah, you could probably do okay with, if you wanted to rent up here and keep it down there, I don't think that you could go wrong with that either. And
bizarre time, too. As you mentioned, signed the 2-year deal in Arizona, but let's not forget that it was not a full 82-game schedule. He was there for the bubble season, as it were, played just inside the division, just 38 games. And as he said, it kind of all began when he was informed he was going to be exposed in the expansion draft. And little did he know that he would be selected and then traded to the Calgary Flames. But as he said, the nice thing is, somewhat familiar with Alberta. He's excited to come back to Canada, which we don't hear a whole heck of a lot from some players.
Excited for the snow.
And, he's a Minnesota guy, so of course he likes the snow. And, former teammate with Milan Lucic in Edmonton. So a little bit of familiarity. I love how he's like, yeah, that's probably where it stops, though. I was looking today, and I'm like, yeah, there's not a lot of guys that you've crossed paths with. He's obviously played against a handful of these Flames, but did not know them personally. So a lot going on in Tyler Pitlick's world. And as you say, not very often do you hear the kind of real world stuff. We got furniture. We got to figure out what to do with that. We got a house. We got kids. We got a lot of stuff going on. But he's excited to come to Calgary. And the Flames have found, I would suggest, Pat, a replacement on that fourth line. I know a lot of people are pointing to Derek Ryan because, Tyler Pitlick is listed as a center, but as you just heard there, he's more comfortable on the wing and probably a replacement for a guy like Nordstrom, who primarily plays on the penalty kill, some 5-on-5 time. And I think when you think Tyler Pitlick, you do think Daryl Sutter type guy, and not the least bit surprised he's a member of the Flames.
I actually, when you see the price, there have been some who have not liked it. There have been some who have liked it. I don't mind this acquisition at all for what he is. And I would suggest if you compare it to a guy like Nordstrom, who was used to your point, in a very strong penalty killing role and a very defensively oriented role last year,
which is what he will be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think Pitlick's an upgrade. I do. I think that we're talking about a really solid two-way guy that you play in a defensive role. You go take a look at the metrics and the way he's been used in Philadelphia, in Edmonton, in Dallas, last year in Arizona. It's been with heavy defensive starts, but his chance ratios, his shot rates, pretty solid. Like when you're hit with a 30% offensive zone start, when you're spending 7 out of 10 draws in the defensive zone,
as Lou says, you're underwater a lot.
Exactly. When you are put in those spots and you're starting in the red and you're trying to get to the black, the fact that you can come close to the black and push it like 15-16% when comparing ratios, it's pretty impressive. Or at the very least, it shows you that in a depth role, bottom six role, you can move the play north. And that was not something that we saw a lot with Nordstrom. That was not something that we saw a lot from Nordstrom even prior in his career. Pitlick's got that in a pretty impressive way, pretty solid way in his career. So a fourth-round pick with a $1.75 million cap hit, I don't mind that acquisition for the Flames. I think he'll be a nice fit playing in kind of a third, fourth line, very defensively oriented spot.
Yeah, and I think maybe disappointed is the wrong word or maybe a little too harsh, but I think there was a lot of disappointment with Nordstrom last year, especially at 5-on-5, Pat, and I think to your point, he is an upgrade, and as I've said a long time ago, for those that are upset about the price, I mean, all due respect to guys who've been drafted in the fourth round before in their careers. I know that the best player on this team, certainly offensively, is a fourth-round pick, but the chances of that guy, fourth-round pick, being an NHLer, very minimal. So, not to say that you gave up nothing for Pitlick, but it's not something that I'd certainly be sitting here hammering the desk being upset about.
I think you'll be an upgrade on some of the bottom six wingers they had last year. I do. I still think that there is room for some of these younger players to get opportunities. We don't expect Derek Ryan to be coming back, so I still think Ruzicka and Godin are going to be very much in the mix for that fourth center on this team. And who knows? I mean, I still think the one guy that you have your eye on in terms of a big name forward who could be moved out is Sean Monahan. So who knows? There could be more opportunity opened up depending on what happens with Monahan here in the next week or month or however the course might go. So Tyler Pitlick, newest member of the Calgary Flames. Good to chat with him. You could tell that there's been a lot, and this has been a pretty stressful. And again, nobody's trying to say that these guys don't sign up for it, but doesn't change the fact that it can be a pretty stressful and whirlwind time. Still human beings, and you could definitely pick up some of that in the conversation we just had. Quickly, just around the horn, Steinberg, Nault, Logo with you on the big show this afternoon. How weird was that? Logo, were you as rattled as I was seeing Mark Giordano in a Seattle Kraken jersey? We knew he'd been selected. We knew this was a possibility for weeks and months, and yet still seeing him walk out on that stage in Seattle last night wearing another jersey, it was just strange and a little jarring. Yeah, it was really strange, Will. And I don't know if you saw it the same way, but like when I saw it, I gave him a little bit of a round of applause. It's like, that's from a media standpoint, that guy has been talking to us and has been gracious and easy to work with for the last 15 years. And to just see him in another jersey, no rooting, it was just like, you know what? I'm just going to give that guy a round of applause because he's done a hell of a job in this city. And it was really weird seeing him in that jersey.
Yeah, it was different, but it's certainly, I still think for me, to see a guy on a stage wearing it's different than actually seeing it on the ice. That'll be the time it's kind of a little bit more weird. So, yeah, that's when it really will kind of hit me. But, yeah, certainly a little bit different yesterday for sure. I think it was less shell shock because I anticipated this for the last 5 days. So it's not like it was a massive, oh my God, there it is.
It wasn't so much, like, I've anticipated for the last, month and a bit. And it was still like, whoa, that looks really weird seeing him in other colors. Just a quick round the horn. Oilers fans not happy. Sounds like Zach Hyman is going to Edmonton. I think you could be happy about the prospect of Hyman playing for the Oilers. I think he could be a really good hockey fit for the next 2 or 3 years, on a line with Draisaitl or on a line with McDavid. He has shown a propensity for having a ton of success and being a great complement to highly skilled elite individuals like that. However, Oilers fans not so happy with a 7 or 8 year term, which is what is being discussed right now at over $5 million. Mike Smith also officially back today. But once again, Oilers fans were not happy with the Duncan Keith edition, or some Oilers fans, and some very vocal Oilers fans not happy with a 7 or 8 year term for Zach Hyman. In this case, I don't blame them. That's a lot for a 29-year-old.
I mean, yeah, it is. But at the same rate, I said this yesterday. You weren't on the air yet, I don't think, Pat. But you look at the guys at Edmonton right now, and most notably the two that kind of drive the bus there in 97 and 29. Connor's got 6 years left on his deal, or five years left on his deal going into next season. Really, that Hyman deal's almost looked at like a 5-year deal, in my opinion. And you had to go 7 or 8 to get the cat number low. And when you're a team like Edmonton, who right now needs to save every penny, I don't understand the outrage just because of that specifically. Like when that Hyman deal is 5 years in, you're going to have a pretty good idea of where McDavid stands and how that thing shakes out. The cap might even go up by then. So I don't quite understand the outrage. You have to add somebody. You need someone in that top 6. Yes, the term isn't ideal, but keep in mind you had to go that long to keep the AAV that low. So for me, I don't necessarily get the outrage as much. Now, signing a 39-year-old goaltender to a 2-year deal, yeah, I can get behind that outrage a little bit because I still think they need to find a starting goaltender. I mean, I still don't know what they're doing with Koskinen. Are you buying out James Neal? There's a lot of questions.
They're buying out somebody. Ken Holland confirmed today they're buying out one player. Is it Neal or is it Koskinen?
It's got to be Neal, in my opinion.
If it were me,
Neal can't play.
The problem with Neal is how much is left on that contract, and that is what terrifies me.
It's just 2 years.
Still, but it's a 4-year hit that they're going to be taking, whereas Koskinen,
at 1.9.
Koskinen's a little bit less. I still would rather have just the 2 than the 4, but you're right. In terms of who can play and who can't play, Koskinen's still an NHL goalie. Is he a good NHL goalie? No. If it were me, I always opt for either no buyout or the shorter buyout, but I can understand from a straight-up hockey perspective why they'd go Neal. Shane Gostisbehere traded from Philadelphia to Arizona for what? Arizona gets Gostisbehere, a second-round pick, and a 7th-round pick for what? Future considerations? Is that what we're talking about right now? Straight-up cap dump for the Philadelphia Flyers, and the Arizona Coyotes get a couple of assets on top of Gostisbehere, who had 2 years left at $4.5 million. In terms of, we don't see it a lot, but that whole idea of quote-unquote weaponizing cap space, Arizona just did that and did it extremely effectively. Pretty tidy work from Armstrong and Co. in Arizona.
Yeah, and they continue to do that, right? And I think now the biggest question is, okay, what does Bill Armstrong and company do? And I think a lot of Coyote fans are wondering, what's left for the other guys in the rumors. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Kemper, Garland, Dvorak, even Phil Kessel. Talk about buyouts. I don't think Phil Kessel's going down that road, but Bill Armstrong's done a nice job. They've tried to get back some of that draft capital that has been lost, and I think they've done a great job getting creative in doing so.
Up to 7 second-round picks the next 2 years for the Coyotes.
Just the 7, hey?
Can you parlay some of those into a first?
Or a player, if you're looking to go down that road? Potentially. And Alex,
I still think the best news out of Arizona, by the way, is the fact that they're back in talks with Tempe about an arena. Get out of Glendale. Come on.
I just don't think they're ever going to be ultimately successful. It just feels like a team.
Not in Glendale.
It feels like a team that is at some point going to move if they stay in Glendale. I don't know when. That could be 10 years from now. It just does not seem like any permanence if they stay there.
Tempe would be awesome.
I agree. Tempe, and I know the Scottsdale thing has been floated. Any of the actual places that are close to Phoenix?
For me, it's
Tempe. Canadians?
Tempe, because of the explosion of Arizona State hockey, I feel like it's nice you can just maybe pair those a little bit and have your practice facility, and maybe that's ASU's new home attached. I don't know, but yeah, that'd be cool.
Really quickly, Alex Nedeljkovic from Carolina to Detroit, 3rd-round pick, Jonathan Bernier in return. Bernier set to be an unrestricted free agent in 6 days. This a goalie of the future play for the Wings is what it feels like for me. I'm a little surprised Carolina decided
What
to
is
go.
Carolina doing?
I really don't know. They were worried about his arbitration award, and all of a sudden they trade the goalie that had them. No offense to Mrazek and Reimer, who have been there, and are also UFAs, but who have been there and have been productive for him. But Nedeljkovic looked like the guy that was the goalie of the future. Unless there's another shoe to drop, this one is a little strange. I like that pickup. I don't think Detroit's a playoff team next year, but Steve Yzerman's got a plan, and there's a potential goalie of the future and a guy that can be pretty good for you potentially for the next 5-6 years here.
More questions about, like, how cheap is Carolina? Like, why pay the guy? He's your goalie of the future. What are you doing?
And it's not
You're
even
a team
like
that's
we're
gone
talking about a massive
No, and
payday
you've gone deep in the playoffs the last 2 years. You've got a very good team. You might lose your best defenseman because you don't want to pay him, and now you just lost your goaltender of the future. Bernier's not going to sign there. And even if he is, what is that, a Band-Aid on a pretty big leak all of a sudden on that team in terms of what's going on in goal? I don't get it.
Yep.
I really don't.
And it sounds like Taylor Hall close to signing 4 times 6 in Boston. Barclay Goodrow's deal is done in New York, 6 years at $3.6 million. Flames will be on the clock in just over 24 hours' time. What do we know about the players they'll have to choose from? We're focusing in on that next on The Big Show. Stay with us. Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
Streaming now through the Sportsnet mobile app. This is The Big Show. Sportsnet 960 The Fan, Calgary.
In about 24 hours' time, just over 24 hours from now, I'm not going to do the math. You know how poorly I do at that. But the Calgary Flames will be on the clock at some point tomorrow with the 13th overall selection. That is really the 12th.
If it was day 2 pace, yeah, I'd say the math is impossible to predict because who knows.
Day 2 pace, it could be 42.
They were on day 2.
Hours.
They were on day 2 pace last night for a bit.
They sped it up. I will give them that. They sped up the expansion draft because you're like, this thing is not going to end by.
We already know the
7:30.
picks. Don't drag it out. Come on.
Let's bring out Macklemore. He's going to do a full set, and then we'll announce Arizona's pick. Welcome back to the program. It's Steinberg and Nault with you. Tomorrow, our NHL draft coverage starts at 4, but the draft itself starts at 6. It'll be Will, it'll be Pat, it'll be Aaron Vickers, and Derek Newmeyer from FC Hockey. Vickers and Newmeyer will be our draft experts tomorrow. Derek joins us on the program.
Do we have to
right
have Vickers
now.
on? Is that
Vickers will kind of just be there.
Okay.
Derek's going to be the draft expert.
Sorry, Derek.
Mr. Newmeyer,
No worries.
welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. How are you guys doing today?
You ready? Are you ready? We're good, by the way. Are you ready for tomorrow? You've got a lot of pressure. Like, we're going to you after each pick. We need the expert analysis immediately.
Hey, that's no problem to me. I've been watching these guys all season. I know them well. I've talked about them on other shows. I feel like I'm a pretty good person to talk about them because I've watched them enough and have already done my research.
Nice. Okay, so here's the deal. FC Hockey has their top 300-plus prospects. They've got 300-plus draft profiles. You can go pick up the FC Hockey Draft Guide at NHLEntryDraft.com and plenty to dig your teeth into tomorrow. We're going to be focusing mostly on the FC Hockey rankings and the Central Scouting rankings. That's what you're going to be hearing a lot tomorrow on our NHL draft coverage. So the Flames have the 13th overall pick officially with Arizona's forfeiture. It's actually number 12. So let's focus on that, Derek. And before we get into some of the specifics with some of these guys, just from what you know about this class, what are the most plausible, realistic options when the Flames come up to make their first pick tomorrow?
Oh, that's kind of a loaded question because I feel like this draft is going to be a lot more unpredictable than prior years. It's just there's so much uncertainty right now. The circumstances of this scouting year are just so unique, and it's been so different from what we're all used to. So it's going to be difficult. I think there are going to be a lot of surprises, but obviously certain things we can say pretty confidently. I mean, Owen Power is not going to be there. Matthew Beniers is not going to be there. But I could see there being potential for some big names to maybe slide a little bit and still be available when Calgary picks. Someone like Fabian Lascelles as a possibility, the skilled Swedish forward, maybe Swedish goaltender Jesper Wallstedt. if teams don't really need to go towards goalies or have someone else that they really like. But some other names that I think are pretty realistic options for the Flames would be Cole Sillinger, Chaz Lucius, Corson Kuhlmans from the Brooks Bandits. I think those are some names that you're going to want to be looking out for.
It seems like whenever you talk to someone about the Flames pick, whether it's the Medicine Hat Alberta connection, whether it's just where a lot of people see needs for the Flames, or where this guy is slotted in, seemingly it always comes back to Cole Sillinger, right at the most probable guy that could be there. So tell us a little bit more about Sillinger, your scouting reports, FC Hockey scouting reports on the Medicine Hat, and most recently Sioux Falls forward.
Yeah, Sillinger is an interesting case study. And he really evolved his game in ways that I don't think a lot of people were expecting from last season to this season. So last season, when he played for Medicine Hat in the WHL, he was a pass-first kind of forward. He played a little bit more of an east-west game. He did a lot of his damage from the wall. He'd get the puck, and he'd have a little bit of time and space, and he could find holes that he could thread passes to. He played a really smart and sort of deceptive game. But when he went to Sioux Falls, his style of play really changed. He was playing more of a north-south game. He was a little bit more physical, a little bit quicker, shooting the puck with a lot more intensity, trying to carry the puck himself into the prime shooting areas. So his assist totals went down, but his scoring totals went up. So he really showed off a different side of his game than what has been seen in Medicine Hat. So now there's a little bit of a question, like, who is the real Cole Sillinger? What can teams expect out of him moving forward? I don't see that change as a downside. I think it's a positive, honestly. I think that it shows there's versatility to his game. If he wants to, or it gets asked to play a certain style or a different way, he can adapt to it. I like that he showed a lot of initiative this year. Sioux Falls wasn't the greatest of teams, and it wasn't an easy situation for him to be in a new environment, a new league, but, he really took that upon himself. He really loved having the puck on the stick. He wanted to drive play for his team, and it was really interesting to see what he could do in that kind of scenario.
What's the best part of Sillinger's game in your eyes, Derek?
His shot. He definitely has one of the better shots in this draft class. He's very quick and deceptive with his release. He's got the hands to kind of maneuver the puck around skates and sticks or through skates and sticks to get a better shot for himself. He's really precise with it in tight, but he also has the ability to score from distance. He can score off the rush. I mean, if you go and watch his highlight package from this season, some of those goals were, borderline NHL quality, like shots that even an NHL goaltender would have a really hard time stopping.
He is Derek Newmans, the head video scout with FC Hockey. He'll be our guest tomorrow on the NHL draft. And, of course, the Calgary Flames have the officially 13th overall pick. They will select 12, though, as the Arizona Coyotes at 11 will forfeit that pick. And Pat and I have been talking about this, Derek, jokingly. The record book, I think, will say 13th overall, but, again, it will most notably be the 12th pick for the Calgary Flames. The guy that you've talked about a lot on Twitter the last, I would say, month or less is the defenseman with the Brooks Bandits, Corson Kuhlmans. Tell us about this player and what you like about his game.
Yeah, there's honestly a lot that I like about Kuhlmans. And he goes up and down in rankings depending on the sources you're looking at. But I'm a big fan of him, and some of the other guys on our team at FC Hockey are fans of him as well. And there's just so much upside to him. He's a big, athletic kid who can skate with a lot of speed and power. He handles the puck really well, including at full speed. He's got a great shot from the point. He can make plays. He's got a lot of upside as an offensive defenseman. And with Brooks this year, he put up a point per game. He was driving play really, really well for that team. He was their number one defenseman as a 17-year-old, which is not easy to do at any level, including the AJHL. And there's just a lot of raw upside to his game. He's got a few different interesting tools, and I'm a big believer in his long-term upside. Now, there are some concerns about his decision-making at times, his turnovers. He can be a little turnover-prone, But I think it's worth mentioning, and anyone that follows the AJHL closely will know, is that Brooks plays a really up-tempo style of hockey. They like to push the pace. They like to give their defensemen the green light to carry the puck up ice. I mean, if anyone knows Brooks, it's because they developed Cale Makar, and that's where he did a lot of damage before he went off to the NCAA. So I think with Kuhlman's, he's not exactly the same type of player, but he does play in a way that is a little bit risky. So I think you're gonna have to work with him over time. You're gonna have to clean up his game a little bit, maybe get him to dial things back just a little bit, because how he plays won't precisely translate to the NHL. But he's a guy who really works hard. He's got a great motor. He's really driven. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. So I'm pretty confident in his ability over time to put in the work that will be necessary to really refine his game to a high level at the NHL.
Another program that we've seen a lot of players plucked out of lately is the U.S. National Development Team. You mentioned him earlier. Could be there for the Flames if they choose to go in that direction. Tell us about Chaz Lucius and your scouting report on the American forward.
He's really similar to Sillinger in a lot of ways. So if one of the guys is gone and the other one's still available, I think the Flames would still be pretty happy. He's a pretty sturdy, stocky kind of forward. He's a phenomenal shooter. He's really good in the greasy areas around the net, but he can also score from distance. He's got a really hard, accurate wrist shot that can pick the top corner from different angles. And he's a really good player in the cycle. You know, he's not huge. He's not like 6'4", 6'5". He's only about 6 foot, 6'1", but he's really strong in his skates. He's really physical in the cycle. Like, he's a hard guy to knock off his feet or strip the puck from. So when he gets the puck deep in the offensive zone, he's really proficient at with what he can do with it. He's a little bit slow. You like to see him get a little bit quicker and develop a little bit more pace to his game. But what's interesting is that he is recovering from a knee injury. He had a surgery on his knee in the off season and caused him to miss a lot of this season with his recovery. So it begs an interesting question. You know, he looked a little bit slow this season, but how recovered was he? Was he at 100% when he was on the ice? Was that missed training something that held him back, but something that'll be not a concern moving forward? You know, if he still wasn't 100% and there is that extra gear that can be unlocked to his skating, he could be a really dangerous and multifaceted player once he's had a little bit more time to get up to speed.
This one might be more in the dark horse situation or category, certainly when you talk about the Flames at number 13 overall. But I wanted to ask you about this player just because of how strong he was with 7 goals in 7 games at the U18s for Sweden. What do you like and maybe dislike about the game for Isaac Rosen?
I like Rosen a lot, actually, and he's a guy who jumped a lot on our list after his performance at the U18s. You know, it's funny, with the U18s, Sweden had 2 main scoring lines, and Rosen was on the second line, and he didn't have a whole lot of help around him. It certainly wasn't the stronger of the 2 lines, but he still managed to score, like you said, 7 goals in 7 games, and he did a lot of damage by himself. He wasn't getting a lot of help, but he was still finding ways to be really effective. He was generating a lot of odd man rushes and breaks up ice. When he got these opportunities, he was burying them. He's a player who can play up or down a lineup, which is really interesting. When he was in the SHL this season, you know, he played, I think it was 22 games, but he didn't get a lot of ice time. You know, he was playing on the 3rd or 4th line, but he still looked good doing it. You know, he played with a lot of energy, a lot of pace. He would chase guys down on the forecheck and strip pucks. But it was interesting to watch him at the U18s where he was given a bit more of an offensive leash, and he was really, really effective at it. So he's an interesting guy in the sense that he could play up or down a lineup, and obviously there's a lot of value to that. Maybe he's a guy who could get into the NHL a little bit sooner than some of his peers because you could trust him in a bottom 6 role. But down the line, you know, maybe he's a guy who can score 20 or 30 goals and put up 50 or 60 points while also killing penalties. So there's a lot of versatility to him, and I certainly like that about his game.
Derek Neumeier with us from FC Hockey He will be one of our draft experts with us on our NHL draft coverage tomorrow here on Sportsnet 960 The Fan. The only other name that is really interesting to me, and FC Hockey has him ranked at number 20. I know that a number of scouts collaborate to come up with your consensus rankings. I'm curious about what Derek thinks about Matt Coronado out of USHL Chicago. The numbers off the charts. He's a really, really skilled player. Where would you have him in your round one ranking?
It's funny since we released our rankings, we've still done more work on these guys, and we've gone and watched more video. And obviously we can't change something that's been printed and sold, but I think we might have been a little too low on Coronado, or at least I personally think we were a little too low on him. I've watched a lot of video of him over the last few days, and he's a guy who I think I'm a lot higher on than I was before. And you just can't deny the results that he put up this year. Chicago, they're a development factory right now. They're almost on par with something like the London Knights. They've just produced so much top-end talent lately, and Coronado is definitely one of the bigger names that have come out of that program as well. He plays with a ton of pace. He's got a great motor, and he's so dangerous when he gets the puck on his stick. Throughout this season, teams kept having to focus more and more on trying to, line up their best defenseman against him to try and shut him down, and it just didn't work. I mean, he was a guy who got better and better as the season went along. He was a goal per game in the USHL playoffs, leading Chicago to a title. He's a guy who has a lot of interesting upside. He's not the biggest skater. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the best skater. And he's maybe not the most purely skilled as like a puck handler or a playmaker or a shooter, but he's really good in those areas. He's just a guy who has a really high understanding of where he needs to go and what he needs to do. He brings it on a shift-by-shift basis. And once he gets the puck on his stick, he's just going to find some way or another to beat you. And that's what makes him so interesting. I don't like to do comparisons very often, but I do see some sort of similarities between someone like him and someone like an Alex DeBrincat, where DeBrincat's not the biggest guy, he's not the fastest guy, but he's really smart. He puts in a ton of work. And when he gets the puck on his stick in a dangerous area, he's a hard guy to stop because he's always one step ahead of the defenseman. And if you give him a little bit too much time and space, he's going to make you pay for it. And I think there's definitely a little bit of that in Coronado. And I think Coronado is a guy that I wouldn't be surprised if some teams were really, really high on him and viewed him, possibly closer to 10 than to 20.
Okay. Good stuff, Derek. Looking forward to seeing you here tomorrow, and cannot wait to get our draft coverage started. The first round of the NHL draft starts tomorrow at 6 o'clock Calgary time. We'll see you then. Thanks for doing this today.
Hey, no problem, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. It's going to be a blast.
Absolutely. Derek Neumeier of FC Hockey, one of their top scouts, and our NHL draft expert tomorrow on the Atlas Pizza and Sports Bar guest hotline. Make it a great night. Choose from pizza and wings, pasta and seafood, or steaks and ribs. Order now through DoorDash or dine in at 6060 Memorial Drive Northeast. Alongside Will, I'm Pat. We're live from our iconic studio this afternoon downtown. The big show rolls on next, and the next couple segments, we're dialed in on the captain. Haven't talked a whole lot today about Mark Giordano. He's our focus for the next couple of segments. Stay with us on The Big Show, Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
You're locked on to The Big Show, Calgary Sports Talk in the afternoon. Okay, smart speaker, play Sportsnet 960.
In order for this not to happen, it was a price that we couldn't pay.
It's the general manager, Brad Treliving, last night following the official news of Mark Giordano's selection by the Seattle Kraken. By the way, great conversation with Tree from this morning. Brad with Boomer and Pinder. It's up online, sportsnet.ca/960, as is our conversation with Tyler Pitlick, who joined us a little earlier in the show as well, the newest member of the Calgary Flames. Tree was on with the morning show before the Pitlick deal, so doesn't talk about that, but lots of other things addressed by the general manager and the Flames. But that was him last night when talking about losing Gio in expansion, a price we couldn't pay. I thought there was a price that could have made sense to keep Gio from Seattle. I thought that there was an area that you could find where you could make the argument that the threshold was better weight in Calgary's direction than elsewhere. But what they were ultimately asking for and what you're about to hear from Elliot Friedman, yeah, you can understand why the Flames did not pay this price. Here's Friedge on the latest 31 Thoughts podcast, which dropped this morning on the situation with Giordano, the Flames, and now Seattle.
I think this was a very emotional period for Giordano.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of admitted that when he spoke to the media after the event on Wednesday night. I think he was hoping that somehow the Flames and the Kraken would reach a deal to keep him there. You were right. They were asking for a first and a third. You nailed that last week in our podcast. Calgary was not willing to pay that. I think Calgary hoped that maybe that would change, that maybe it was a bluff and in the last minute it would change. Mm-hmm. It never did. I think the Flames also, like some teams made deals in advance, like Arvidsson and things like that, or Graves or McCann. I believe Calgary talked about moving Giordano. If he wasn't comfortable in Seattle, is there somewhere else he wanted to go? And, other teams just weren't willing to make those deals because of their own expansion issues. And I think up until really Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, I think Giordano was hoping somehow it might change. And it's not that he doesn't want to go to Seattle. It's just that he's obviously so connected to Calgary.
And that's Elliot Friedman with Jeff Merrick on the 31 Thoughts podcast from this morning. It's up at sportsnet.ca right now. You couldn't do that. As much as Mark Giordano meant to the city, meant to the organization, meant to the community, a first and a third round pick, which Elliot just confirmed, it didn't, that's not good business. And that was such a significant asking price. I really don't feel like the Flames had any choice but to let what happened last night happen. And I feel bad for Flames fans. I feel bad for Gio. The whole situation. It's not ideal, but the situation as it was, I don't think they had a whole lot of choice but to leave him unprotected and let Seattle make the decision, which they ended up doing.
No, and at the same rate, I talked about it leading in. There was a tiny bit of panic for me because this organization has been loyal to a fault. You just mentioned how important he is to the community. I mean, he's won the Muhammad Ali Humanitarian Award, which you look at the list of winners of that award, it's a pretty special list. He has done a ton here, and that's not to take away from his wife, Lauren, who has helped him in every regard and has been massive behind the scenes. They are two pillars in this community, and there's going to be a lot of charities in Southern Alberta that are going to sorely miss them. And there is no other way to put it than that right there. But at the end of the day, whether it was a first and a third, or even, as I said, going in, a fourth-round pick, a second-round pick, I just didn't see it as this team being in a spot where it made a ton of sense. Now, if it was a standalone fourth or fifth round pick, as we just talked about with Pitlick, yeah, it's a different story because the likelihood of that player or pick turning into something is different.
Well,
but
and that's why I said there was a threshold that you could find. And I know that not everybody, like the three of us all had different versions of what that would be, but I think there were differing opinions. I can't see anybody that would say, yes, giving up a first and a third made sense in this situation. That was in 100% of the time over that line.
And you look at the protection or exposed list for the Flames, and sorry to everybody else that was on that list, but Mark Giordano it wasn't even close.
This wasn't Eberle and Bailey, right?
It wasn't even close. He was the most attractive piece, and that's why I said going in, if you're Ron Francis, why would you back down off that price? He is by far and away the best player that was likely available across the league yesterday. You could make that argument. And why would Francis back down from that? There is no reason for him to do that. And he stood firm. And as a result, Drew Living and company said, well, at the end of the day, this is all we can do. And we have to say goodbye to our captain. And now we have to turn that and see the positive as $6.75 million in cap space.
And when I talk a lot about thresholds, the final thing I'll say before we take a quick break, continue talking Gio and kind of reminisce and look back on his time in Calgary with Matt Stajan. The fact that they did not have to give up assets or anything else. They're getting $6.75 million in a cap world. I think that there is value in that. And I think that you could make a pretty salient argument that having to eat salary and get a pick at the deadline or get the entire $6.75 million in expansion, I think they're comparable, and that's why I'm not quick to just slam the Flames and slam the GM for not trading him at the deadline, because I think that this eventuality is there's value in that too. There really is, and I think strong value in that. Whereas having to take a bad contract back at the trade deadline, we're fitting in $6.75 million flush is next to impossible to do, or having to eat half of that salary for this year and next year. Yeah, I think that there is a very good argument to make that there's just as much value with having that 6.75 in cap space. Tomorrow, more NHL news we're expecting at the NHL draft. We've got 4 great sponsors of our draft coverage, including Manning Heights, work, store, play, personal and flexible warehouse spaces, still available, but going fast. Customize a storage space or expand your business. Learn more at manningheights.ca. More on Geo with Matt Stajan up next on The Big Show. Sportsnet 960.
The Big Show is live and streaming at sportsnet.ca/960. Sportsnet 960, The Fan, Calgary.
The end of an era for the Calgary Flames last night officially. Mark Giordano selected by the Seattle Kraken in the NHL expansion draft after 17 years as part of the Flames organization, including almost a decade as this team's captain, 949 games, second most ever as a member of the Calgary Flames, second only to Jarome Iginla. Yeah, it truly is an end of an era for the Flames, and Mark Giordano moves on. And I got to say, as we welcome you back to the program, Steinberg, Nault, and now we welcome in Sportsnet Flames analyst Matt Stajan. Matty, first of all, appreciate the time. I know that you are on holiday in Ontario, so really do appreciate you taking a few minutes for us. And second of all, how bizarre was that for you as a longtime teammate of Gio to see him wearing another jersey last night? It was strange, man. I was prepared for it, and yet it was still very, very rattling.
Yeah, it was weird, to say the least. Even when we were all prepared for it, it just didn't look right. I think any Flames fan would probably agree with that. But it's sad for me, being his friend and knowing how, he always thought that this was a possibility, and would just come into grips with it the last few days. And, speaking for myself, just letting that sink in, it still doesn't feel real. So I can't imagine how it feels for Gio and his family. And I'm sure it'll take a while to sink in, but all you can do is turn the page now and focus on a new beginning for them in a new city.
Have you spoken to Gio recently at all in the lead up to this, or even after it became official?
Yeah, we were talking a bit before, and just as friends, kind of seeing how he's doing, and he still didn't really know a few days before what was going to happen. Obviously, as a player, you always know there's a possibility, especially when you come to the realization you're not going to be protected. So I think, when it's happened, and I could see on his face a little bit, it probably felt weird. And I think it's going to take some time to settle in, the emotions and everything. Like, you've been in one place your whole pro career pretty much, or NHL career. And, they've uprooted their family, their kids are born in Calgary, and everything that goes with it. And, pretty quickly, that's all changed. It's at the end of the season, I know that this wasn't probably what he thought would happen and their family thought would happen. So now that it's happened and it's become a realization that things are changing and life's changing for them, it's been tough and sad for him and his family. But it's also, you got to look at what's coming for them. And me selfishly as his buddy and close family friends with them, we're kind of, coming to realization that they won't be, just a quick drive away to do a visit with our kids. But it is what it is. That's the tough part of the business.
This is probably so far from his mind, but I know you just mentioned it. Selfishly, the Stajan family is probably wishing this does come true. But for a lot of Calgarians, they're also hoping it comes true. Do you think Gio will be in Calgary post-career?
Oh, I can't speak to that. I hope so. But, I don't know. They, things can change, and I think they're just focusing on, how they're going to figure out this next month and moving and all that. I know that they're back and forth, and they have family in Ontario, and they're in Toronto as well a lot of the summer. So we'll see. That's like all of us, it's what you want to do post career too. That plays into that, and where you want to raise your family. So I'm not speaking to that, but I'm sure it's a possibility. But right now, I think he wants to play, quite a few more years. So, and the way he keeps himself in shape, I'm not putting that past him. He'll play as long as he can. So that might be, 3-4 years down the road.
Matt Stajan's with us. I wanted to spend most of this time as opposed to reacting to what happened last night, because I think even the most pragmatic Flames fan who didn't believe they could make a deal to keep him, all that type of stuff, even that fan, I think, would be a little rattled or a little sad to see a guy who's been associated with this organization for so long leave and leave kind of on the conditions that he did, 51 games away from playing 1,000 games in a Flames uniform. So go back to because you guys are both Toronto guys. You guys both played minor hockey in that area. You're 2 years apart. You're a little younger than Gio, but did you know much about him? Like, tell us about when you first became aware of Mark Giordano.
Oh, we go way back. So we played minor hockey against each other. Back to when we were like 7, 8 years old. And we were on rival teams in Toronto, and then we played in a couple summer tournaments on the same team. Just a couple summer hockey tournaments where you put teams together, and so that's the only time I played with them through minor hockey. So we knew their family a little bit, to say hi, and you'd see them at the rinks. And then it wasn't until obviously you know each other, and when you see each other you say hi. But he went down to AA, and then I was, kind of moving around teams. And then in junior, we played against each other midget. And then in junior, he came up after I had already played and was drafted. He started his junior career like the year before his overage year. So it was really late. And that's where you run into him and you watch him play. And I'm like, man, this guy's going to surprise a lot of people. And before you know it, he was in the NHL. Like it was crazy. So, I think getting traded to Calgary and then, we got married a week apart. We instantly, just from the connection we had at a younger age, naturally we really bonded and became closer and closer. And our families and our wives are really, best of friends, and our kids are best of friends. So, just kind of grew over time, and it helps that we were in Calgary on the same team for as long as we were. So that's kind of the history with us, and we'll forever have that. So even with me being retired now, being in the same city has just been so nice for our families, just because, you have that familiarity and that comfort. And maybe, it was a bit of an escape now to be with me, because I wasn't on that team, and it got him away from the stress of the day-to-day. So nothing but good memories, though. Like even the father's trips, his dad and my dad would bond and would always be together that whole trip. It's just one of those things you grow up and you have that connection. It's there forever, and it's led to our friendship.
As we know, a lot of guys are superstitious. Stage, did you guys drive to the rink together or anything like that?
No, because he was he liked to get to the rink a little bit earlier than me.
1:30 p.m. Yeah.
He was everybody's superstitious. We'd always eat pregame meal, and you'll hear guys like dinners on the road. Like it just becomes a part of your life, and you're doing it it becomes normalcy. That's your life. Your second family. You work out together, and that's why it's tough on a lot of hockey players when they are done or when they do get traded, because it's a new beginning to pretty much all you know. That's all we do until you retire. You're playing hockey from such a young age. So he was he likes to get to the rink early, and he takes care of himself. Like it's nothing people don't know. His preparation and the way he works, that's it's never in question. He's one of the best, and that's why he's able to play at the level he's been at at this age.
Funny, Stage. I'm looking back, and I don't know if this is a hallmark for you as much as it would be for Gio, but he was in front of friends and family on October 14th, 2006, when he scored his first 2 NHL goals in Toronto. You were a member of the Maple Leafs that night. You beat them in overtime, and I'm looking at the game sheet right now. Had an assist in the game where Gio scored his first 2 goals. You were on the other side. You weren't a teammate. You had the Flames are so far out of your vision. You had no idea you were going to be a member of the team at that point. But do you remember that night at all?
Oh, I definitely remember it because I knew Gio, right? Like, we weren't close friends, but I knew who he was. So when I found out he was playing, I was excited for him and his family, and like they've had some family, tragedy as well. So you know about that growing up, and he lost one of his sisters, and so I was excited for him that game, and that's a very memorable game because Matt Sundin scored his 500th goal that night on a hat trick in overtime, and Gio scored his first 2 goals. So that's a night I won't forget, and I always bug Gio that his first goal went off my shin pad because I didn't block it, but it beat me clean. I was the guy coming out to try and block the shot, and he put it by me and scored on Andrew Raycroft. So I remember that night probably as much as he does, and we've had a lot of giggles over time about it.
It's funny because, people were texting in yesterday. Like, I'm pretty sure Stajan was on the ice for Giordano's first goal. So there you go. It went off your shin pad.
Yeah.
It's an own goal. I'm going to tell Gio his first NHL goal was an own goal. Yeah.
Yeah, Raycroft should have had it. Let's just say that.
Did you? So it was pretty instant for you. Like when you got traded here, Gio was at this point now a full-time member of the Flames. Was yet to be captain, of course. But you guys pretty instantly bonded, and your wife Katie and his wife Lauren all became pretty close pretty quickly.
Right away, because you go to a new team, and I was lucky. I got traded with a couple other guys, so you have that friendship naturally. You come in with a few familiar faces, and then you get into a new dressing room. You're looking around the room at who like it's a small world, the hockey world, but it's still you're going into a new surrounding. So naturally, obviously, we knew of each other, and we've played a little bit of minor hockey against each other and with each other, like for a couple tournaments. So right away we bonded with them. I think we went for dinner and a movie pretty much right away with the Gios, and we both, none of us had kids back then, and we got married just after that season. We got married a week apart from each other. We were at each other's weddings, so it was instant. Our wives are the best of friends as well, and it's just something that was almost meant to be. Made our transition easier, and then just going through the years with Gio becoming captain, like he that's a tough task to become captain after Jarome Iginla, because Jarome Iginla is an amazing person and player, obviously Hall of Famer, and Gio had to fill that role to be the captain and live up to that expectation. And I don't think if you ask anybody who's part of the team and in the dressing room, he did that. He was the ultimate leader and lived up to that expectation and continues to. And I'm just proud of the guy because he just wants to win. Like I know people always give a lot of people grief that we haven't won a lot of playoff rounds here in the last bunch of years, but not Gio's fault. He leaves it all on the line. I remember after going through the rebuild and how upset and how hard it was on him when he was hurt for the 2015 run, and he was out of the playoffs. You could just see on his face he was trying to come back and play with after having surgery on a torn bicep, and he just couldn't. But that bothered him. He won't admit that, but that was hard on him. And 2 years later, when we made the playoffs again, I just remember looking at him on the bench and him looking at me, being like, "Thank goodness! Like we've worked like all these years, rebuilding some tough years. Just those are the moments that you remember professionally with one of your best friends." And I just hope he goes to a situation that they can be competitive, and who knows where it brings them. Like we've seen crazy things happen with these expansion teams, and he's got 1 year left. So now I think he has some control to what he wants, and maybe hopefully he gets a chance to win a Stanley Cup here as his career comes to an end.
Matt Stajan is with us. So we're reflecting back on the time in Calgary for Flames captain Mark Giordano, who was selected by the Seattle Kraken yesterday in the 2021 expansion draft. I want to come back to the torn bicep in a second, but going back to what you just talked about being captain after Jarome Iginla left, you were obviously on that team I think everybody knew that when Jerome asked to be traded away from Calgary, that it was going to be the end of an era, kind of a turning of a page. Stage, was it pretty obvious that that was going to be Mark Giordano as the next captain? Was that pretty well known on that team at that time?
To me, it was. Yeah, I think so. I don't like. There's a lot of leaders on the in that dressing room, and we went a season with no captain, which I thought was the right move because after Jerome leaves, I think he should have a little bit of a grace period there. But there was no doubt that it was going to be Gio. And obviously, it was the right decision and a no-brainer. But yeah, I never even thought it would be anybody else. And anybody else on the team, if they thought it was going to be someone else, I'd probably tell them to give them their head a shake because he was the clear, obvious choice and the right choice.
All right, now you mentioned it. The 2014-15 season was remarkable. You guys had double-digit come-from-behind victories in the third period. It was Johnny Gaudreau's rookie season. He was obviously up for the Calder Trophy at the end of the year. It was just a very special season. And it's funny, Brad Treliving spoke yesterday after the expansion draft, and he said, I don't know if this is the right forum to talk about this, but going back to that night in New Jersey when Giordano got hurt, of course, it was the trade deadline was a few days after that, and he said he had a conversation with Gio, and he said, we don't want to make it look like we're in desperate need for a defenseman, so why don't you take warm-up the next night? And Gio was saying, well, they're going to know I'm hurt. And he said, no, they're not. And he took a shot in warm-up, apparently, and it dribbled towards the net. And he says, see, I told you they're going to know I'm hurt. And Tree said, no, that's just the way you shoot the puck always, so don't worry about it. But I do want to ask you about that because, take us behind the curtain a little bit. I mean, he goes down that game in New Jersey. I'm sure it was an eerie feeling on the bench and kind of not knowing what his status was as you played out the rest of that game. And then 2 nights later, you're on Long Island playing against the Islanders. It might have been in Brooklyn. I'm not sure. But tell us about that pregame kind of situation as you knew Gio was taking warm-up, but obviously was severely hurt. I brought it up on the air yesterday. I said, if I ever talk to Stage again on this airwave, I'm going to ask him this question. Who tied his skates in the room? Like, how did that go down?
Was it you, Stage?
No, it wasn't me.
It was Depot, wasn't it?
No, I think he kind of he laced them up and then someone I can't even remember. But just back to that, like that, and I was telling Ryan Leslie this the other day. He was asking me about a Gio memory, and it's not even a good memory, but it just speaks to the impact he had on the dressing room. So when we won that game in New Jersey and he got hurt, like in the dying seconds of the last minute, I've never been in a dressing room that quiet after a win. Like you could hear a pin drop after we just won a big game, going into the trade deadline and, being in a good spot. But we lost our captain, and you could argue that he was a good chance he was going to be up nominated for the Norris that year if he didn't get hurt the way he was going.
Yep.
So it was a quiet dressing room and just a deflating feeling. And looking back, like his impact on that team and the way we responded to that, and we didn't really do much at the deadline there either. We brought in Schlemko, it was minor moves, but we rallied around Gio's injury, and that sucks for him, and it was so hard on him. But the impact he had on the team was the reason we were able to rally, because that was what we talked about in the room. Like, he's not in the dressing room, and we're going through that stretch, and a lot of it was, let's do this for Gio. Let's get going. Let's as much as he does, let's rally around this. And so as hard as it was on him, I know he would never admit that. He rallied us in a way that only certain people can, and that's the presence he was and the captain he was in the dressing room. And anybody on that team will say the same thing, because that was devastating when we lost him in that night in New Jersey.
2 more with Matt Stage, and Matty, I promise we'll let you go after that, and you can go back to spending time on your holiday with your family, and we do appreciate the time today. Just take us back to kind of one of the biggest moments of your NHL career, your 1,000th NHL game. By this point, you and Gio would have been, your friendship would have been a decade old, and now, like, you guys are thick as thieves. What was Gio's reaction like? How did he pump you up in the locker room? That type of stuff. Tell us kind of about your experience with Gio the night of your 1,000th NHL game.
Yeah, it was, I think as you play and you get to that point, it's just more of the same. Keep going and you push each other, you have fun with each other, with all your teammates. He was very happy, obviously, and he's always happy for his teammates, and that's what makes him the special person he is. And his wife as well, Lauren, like, she's salt of the earth. She does so much for that community as well, that is behind the scenes that people don't even know. Like the things they do for that city, for our city in Calgary, it's amazing. But just supportive and just always, because you get a lot of flack. Like I wasn't a star like in the league, and I grinded through to get there, and he's like, you know what, you got there because you're a good player. Like he would pump me up, and I was in and out of the lineup that season too, and he kept me afloat, and he says, you're going to get there, and we need you in the lineup. You're a big part of this team, and just the things that any good friend will say, and more so at dinners and just when you're spending time together, you deep dive into certain things. So he was very supportive. I don't think anybody who has a close friend isn't that way. Otherwise, you're not close. So I'm thankful I got to reach into Calgary, and I'm that kind of, it's one thing that bugs me about all this is that I just wish he would have got that accomplishment as a Calgary Flame in the uniform that we're all going to remember him in. That's unfortunate, but sometimes this business is cruel, and we'll have to watch it from afar. But I think he's very, very happy in what he's done in Calgary. He should be very proud, and as this all settles in, I'm sure the city of Calgary and all the Flames fans, on top of what we've seen the last few days, will give him a wonderful ovation and accolades when he does come back, because he deserves it as much as any Calgary Flame, and I'm sure we'll see that down the road.
What is we have seen this guy win fitness testing time and time again. Take us into the Mark Giordano exercise, fitness, workout regime. Like, how much of a freak of nature is this guy?
Oh, he is. I don't even know how to pinpoint it, but he used to lift really heavy, and he'd come in just bulky and strong. And as the league's changed, he's changed his routine, as everybody does. You know what works for you, but he can just push himself. And anybody in the NHL, if you can't push yourself, you're not playing in the NHL. I'm just going to flat out say that. Like, you have to push yourself just to make it to pro hockey, let alone the NHL. But then when you get to the NHL and you see the way guys work, he takes it to another level. Like, he can just push through, and it's amazing. He's not the best skater, he'll admit that. But when you're doing even just skating drills in practice, he's always near the front. Obviously he's getting older now. Maybe it's not the case, but we'd always say the famous line in our dressing room was when Gio would just break free. It was like he was Forrest Gump breaking out of the braces that he wears on his legs. That'd be Gio jumping into the rush, just the way because his skating stride is kind of choppy. So that's him. He knows how to push himself, but he's smart. He knows what his body needs now. And as you get into your 30s, that's what you have to do to play and to keep playing and at a high level. And he's learned to do that, and he works closely with his trainers and with the medical team and keeping your body fit. And I think he's been a guy that everybody, including myself, look up to and try and, keep up to, and that's why fitness testing in Calgary, guys have always had great tests. Trust me, I played in Toronto, and guys were a lot more fit than my days in Toronto. I'll say that.
Vegas sets the number at 3.5 more seasons for Giordano. Where are you going?
Over or under 3.5?
Oh, 3.5. I'm gonna. Ooh,
it's a good number.
I'll say it is a good number. I'd say 3 for sure. But more, I'd say over. As long as there's no injuries, he's going to be over. Because you know what, he loves the game. He loves the game, and at the end, he's not going to be a guy that's going to be looking to make $5 to $7 million anymore, right? So seeing Char do it and play, and Joe Thornton, I see Gio doing the exact same thing.
Get out of here, Stage. Really appreciate the time. Really do. Thanks for doing this.
All right. See you guys. Talk soon.
Matt Stajan with us on the Atlas Pizza and Sports Bar guest hotline. Great stuff from Stage. Make it a great night. Choose from pizza and wings, pasta and seafood, or steaks and ribs. Order now through DoorDash or dine in at 6060 Memorial Drive Northeast. I just thought he'd be the perfect guy to talk about his time with Gio, and a ton of props to Stage because dinner's coming up. It's almost 6 o'clock in Ontario. He's hanging out with the fam. So thanks for doing that, Stage. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, Will Not Sportsbook stumps another person.
Yeah, the Will Not Sportsbook, like, I don't know, the sharps wouldn't bet there. Is all I'm saying. The it's too bang on. Like, they're too hard. Like, if you're trying to make some money, you're not making it at Will Not Sportsbook. Let me tell you that. Little palate cleanser up next.
Literally.
Maybe literally. I'm. What do you have in front of me right there? What are those?
There's 2 Eat More bars on the desk here. Of course, the last visit we had with Adnan Verk, our next guest, we said Pat Steinberg's never had an Eat More. And we wanted the review with Verk the next time that he came on. So we're going to do it live in person. Adnan Verk is
really
next on the big show, Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
MLB insider Adnan Verk, brought to you by Manning Heights. Work, store, play. Personal and flexible warehouse spaces are still available, but going fast. Customize a storage space or expand your business. Learn more at manningheights.ca.
Talking a lot of hockey today, a lot of Flames today. And so before the break, Verk, I called you a palate cleanser. We're going to talk a lot about baseball with you. And Will said, well, yeah, literally it's a palate cleanser because we have something to revisit from a week ago. We talked about chocolate bars, and I said I'd never had an Eat More, and Will said we're going to do it live on the air. And there is one thing I know about Will. He is a man of his word. So, Will, please describe, first of all, hi, Adnan. We should probably say hello. How are you?
Hi, Patty. Well, I love that we're doing this. When you text me those pictures of Eat More, I was awash in a wave of nostalgia and hunger. So I'm living vicariously through both you guys.
So please describe the scene, Will.
Well, I have 2 Eat More bars here. I texted Adnan this morning. I got out of the grocery store, and I said, look at this. I got 2 Eat More bars, and we're going to do this live on the air. And Verk texted back in all capitals, yes. So here we are today. I've got 2, and the best news, Adnan, they are nice and soft. They're ready to go. This is perfect. I'm going to hand one across to Pat right now. I'll keep talking so Pat can open and take his first bite. Then we'll get his review live on the air. Yeah, sorry for the nostalgia, but I just had to text you that photo because I know you're excited for this.
No, I loved it. I just hope that Pat loves it as much as I do. I mean, that's the moment of truth. So far, Patty and I align when it comes to the chocolate bars.
Like, yeah, you guys are off on the caramel, but that's fine. It's okay.
But like everything else, I mean, O. Henry's great. Tell you one thing about an O. Henry bar. I was thinking about this. When you eat the O. Henry bar, I used to eat the chocolate and the nut first, and then I'd leave like the nougat in the middle. How about that?
How messy did your hands get? What's wrong with you? You're an animal.
Were you eating like a cob of corn? What are you doing?
Yeah. It's the corn on the cob. That's what you eat in O. Henry. I want to do it so badly right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, Pat, give it a go.
We need to talk about some of your deep-seated issues before we go any further for eating an O. Okay, I've never had an Eat More before. I've never been attracted to it. It's never intrigued me. I always thought it was just like a weird granola bar, and everybody's like, no, man, they're outstanding. Because the old commercials would be like a guy out in the woods chopping wood, sitting down with his overalls and eating an Eat More. I'm like, I got no interest in that. Like, what? So here, this is my first time. I've never been interested, but everybody says they're great. So let's see.
This is great. This is sound effects.
Let's go. Eat more. Eat more.
They're nice and soft too, so it's like just what you want. You don't want it to be, rock hard. Well, his eyes are opening. He's nodding his head. Seems like we've got an impressed look on the face.
They're pretty good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got like,
pretty good. That's what we're looking for.
It's got the caramel. It's got a little nut to it. Yeah, I can get down with that. I'm a big fan of the Eat More.
Oh, he's picking it back. He wants another bite. Look, he's picking it back up. Oh, he's going. Yeah, he's going for bite. Yeah, he's going for bite 2. Yeah, we got bite 2 live on the air. I love it. Love it.
Solid chocolate bar.
Perfect. Well, if you can crush the rest of that in the break. And Adnan,
you don't want to see me finish it on the air.
And once again, Adnan, you and Steinberg, lockstep. You guys are right there with the Eat More.
Please tweet the video just so I can retweet it one of my prouder moments. I introduced my buddy Pat Steinberg to an Eat More bar, and it lived up to the hype. As you said, pretty good, pretty solid. The key is this: he's going to crush the rest of it in the break.
Yeah,
That's
he is.
a solid chocolate bar.
Yeah, he is.
100%.
He is. And yeah, absolutely, I'll be putting that video on Twitter just for you, and looking forward to the reaction to that. Pat Steinberg, Eat More fan.
No longer an Eat More virgin.
No. Oh, jeez.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
Jeez. Oh, jeez. Okay. How do you segue out of that? I don't even think you can segue out of that. But anyways,
it's been a good hit, Adnan. Have a great
okay,
day.
Adnan. We'll see you later. We're now off the air for good. So bye bye. Since we
get Kelly Kirsch now to Eat More bar.
Yeah, no doubt. The Jays slowly crawling back as they began to trim that wild card gap in the American League. Your thoughts on the Blue Jays and the big debate now with the deadline less than 10 days away. Is Ross Atkins and company going to add more to this team?
I hope so. I mean, it's interesting. We've gone back and forth here, fellas. I know Pat said, okay, let's go all in, and me and Will have been more cautious. But I'll say this. I mean, the Rays right now are a game back of Boston, but they've shown their vulnerability. You know, with Glass now out, that starting pitching isn't nearly as strong as it once was. The Red Sox offense is ridiculous, and we saw that up close and personal in what they did against the Blue Jays. So, huge series for Boston and New York. 4-game set at Fenway. If Boston sweeps the Yankees, it's good night, Irene. If the Yankees get the split, okay, they keep on trolling. If the Yankees get 3 of 4, now it's down to a 5-game edge. So it's not just what happens with the Blue Jays, who obviously want to keep winning, but I think it's also what Ross Atkins is looking at, what's going to happen with the Yankees and the Red Sox. So I hope I hope the Blue Jays add. Obviously, a bullpen piece would be nice, maybe not a left-handed bat. Everyone knows Kimbrel is a big fish out there. If you want to really swing for the fences, Kimbrel is your guy with which to do so. So I don't think the Jays brass really knows yet. They know July 30th they're coming home. There's going to be 15,000 fans. They're going to be sold out. But I don't know if they've made a decision yet on what they're going to do.
How interesting, at least I found it very interesting, but Ross Atkins coming out and saying, hey, if we can't add to our team in run prevention, then we will look to add to our offense. We've talked a lot about that, whether it be Nelson Cruz or elsewhere. Did you find that as interesting as I did? And do you still think they're involved in the Nelson Cruz conversation?
I think so. Cruz is going to go somewhere, and he's going to rake. We all know the guy's an outstanding player, an outstanding hitter specifically, and I think that he's legit in what he's saying there because I'm of the opinion you go with run prevention. I mean, that was the whole theme of the Blue Jays offseason, which is why George Springer was added, not just for his bat, but because he's a great center fielder. But I do agree with that point, Will, which leads me to think even more so the fact that Jays are in this thing. They're not going to be just, sitting up there saying, well, we'll just see what happens. Like, no, they're looking to contend, looking to make a move. And I think that makes sense. If you can't get the bullpen guy you want, i.e. Kimbrel, if you can't get another starter to supplement what you already have, you can always tinker with your team and go, hey, we're top 5 in runs in the majors. Well, let's just get another bat. Let's just try to outslug teams 8-7. So I like hearing that. If I'm a Blue Jays fan, that means I'm optimistic Toronto's going to do something. I prefer prevention, but if it's production, what the heck?
60 wins for the San Francisco Giants. That's incredible.
It's incredible because nobody saw it coming, Will. And eventually you say to yourself, okay, the Red Sox and Giants are the surprise teams of this year. Well, it's no longer a surprise. I mean, literally, we're 4 months into the year now. There's only 2 months left. The Giants aren't going anywhere. They're on pace for 100 wins. Buster Posey has like a 983 OPS. That's the highest of his career. At one point, Johnny Cueto was like a number 5 starter on this team. When he's number 5, he's looking pretty good. Gossman, if it wasn't for DeGrom, would win the Cy Young Award. That's how great he's been coming out from Baltimore. I love the splitter, his best pitch. Anthony DeSclafani, former Red, unbelievable how he's turned around his career now with San Francisco. So you've got unheralded pitchers. You've got an offense which rakes. They lead the majors in home runs. They're neck and neck right now with the Blue Jays. Not just Posey, but Brandon Crawford at 34 is having the best season of his career, both offensively and defensively. You look at a guy like Mike Yastrzemski, an older guy. I mean, he's in his 30s, but he's still another valuable piece for them. The rare guy that's under 30 is Donovan Solano. He's one of their good youngish players. But it's odd, Will, in that normally you see this team, you go, oh, so they're bad for a couple of years. Oh, it's young players. No, it's actually veteran players who have just refound their groove. It's like how Stella got her groove back. The Giants' veteran players have got their groove back. They've supplemented with some smart moves to the starting pitching. Bullpen's very good. There's still a game up on the Dodgers. Like, everybody keeps saying, well, it's the Dodgers division to lose. Well, no, listen, we're 4 months in, and the Dodgers still aren't in first place. And as a matter of fact, the Dodgers blew yesterday's game. Kenley Jansen is getting booed by the Dodger fans after what happened. So San Francisco is legit. I know the naysayers will say they have the third easiest schedule in the first half of the season, and now they're going to go toe-to-toe with the Dodgers and the Padres. It's put up or shut up, and I think they're legit.
Final one on baseball from me, and I got to ask you about this bizarre story. I think we all were watching with great intrigue with the Chicago White Sox this season based on their manager hire and, of course, that they were one of the best teams coming in, and they've proven that second only to the Houston Astros right now in the American League in both record and run differential. But what did you make of the last 24 hours of Yermin Mercedes, who goes on a rant on Instagram and says, I quit, I retire from baseball, and now today here we are, and he says, no, I'm back, I love everybody, I'm just kidding, I'm back, I don't have any quit. This team is bizarre to begin with. They are winning games, give them that, but Yermin Mercedes was unbelievable in April, and now obviously playing with AAA, but I'm retired, no, I'm just kidding, I love everybody.
First 39 games he raked. He was one of the stories of the year for the Chicago White Sox and was firmly in contention for AL Rookie of the Year. Then the next 29 games, the guy's an absolute disaster. He got into it, Tony La Russa. He gets sent to AAA. I mean, at his height, he had his own burger. I mean, the Urbanator was unbelievable on the south side. And all of a sudden then, dude, you're in the minor leagues. And I don't think he's as good as he was when he was great, but I don't think he's as bad as he was the last 29 games. So the truth generally lies somewhere in the middle. But if you're 27 years old and you haven't really been in the majors, well, there's probably a reason for that. Whether it's off-the-field issues or on-the-field issues, he hasn't been consistent. And like I said, he got into it with Tony La Russa. So my guess is this, purely speculative, and this is why the danger of social media. Hey, he's probably frustrated with what's happened so far the last month or so. Hey, I'm done. I'm out. And then cooler heads prevail, and he goes, well, hang on a second. Am I really out? Okay, I'll stay. But maybe he's done with the Chicago White Sox. Maybe that's what coaxed him back, was he said, I'm done. They said, listen, why don't you just play? We'll just get rid of you. That's what the issue is. So bizarre to say the least. I like the White Sox team. There's lots to root for in terms of likable guys. They're young stars, even their veteran players. I mean, Liam Hendricks is a great closer. I
think you muted yourself, Verk. Are you there?
You always got that little bit like, it drops out. No, he's gone. It drops out, and you're like, oh, it could just be a serve. He'll pop back in. Goes about 4 seconds, and then you know that he's gone. We'll reconnect with Adnan Verk in just a second. He is our MLB insider. He joins us every Thursday here on the Big Show on Sportsnet 960 The Fan. Verk is back with us. We lost you for a second.
He pulled a Yermin Mercedes. He's like, I'm out. I hate this.
Exactly. Well, it was amazing. I heard Will said you paused yourself. Why would I pause myself? It makes no sense. So I apologize for that. Technical difficulties. I pulled a Mercedes. I went from a Mercedes to a Buick, but yeah, I think his days in Chicago are numbered. That's just my guess. Because why would you say you're out and then you're back in? Clearly something's going on.
Two more quick ones for you, Verk. First of all, this NFL news is certainly making waves in your country. The NFL basically announcing today that they are adding even more to their incentive for players to get vaccinated, to get the COVID-19 vaccine. They continue to kind of two-tier it for vaccinated players and unvaccinated players, and have started to the big news today is what happens if there is an outbreak on teams that don't have vaccinated players, and the punishment and the consequences and who covers that cost, so on and so forth. DeAndre Hopkins is one of the players who is not happy with it. A few others have been pretty vocal about it. How many waves is this story making in your neck of the woods?
It's pretty big. I mean, we taped GM Shuffle earlier today. I wish we'd waited a little longer because this story has definitely got a lot of people talking. We'll discuss it next week on the podcast, of course. But, yeah, I think what people end up saying here, exactly what you said here, Pat, it's an incentive for guys to get vaccinated, but those who don't want to get vaccinated get awfully frustrated. So, listen, I like the NFL is doing this. You've got to be progressive, and you've got to find a way to get people vaccinated. And I don't mean to make any political statements at all, but what's happened here in the country is that half the country is fully vaccinated and half isn't. And those who do not say, well, what's the incentive to do so? Like I was waiting for everything to get opened up. Everything's opened up. Here in Jersey, the only place you have to wear a mask is at the airport. We still have to wear one at MLB Network, so it's dependent upon your place of work. But clearly, what the guys who have not gotten it done say, what's the big deal? I'm living my life. If I'm in Texas and Florida, what's the impact? So the NFL is saying, well, no, we're going to stomp this out, so we'll make it a part of the job that you have to get it done. So I think it's an effective move by the NFL in terms of encouraging players to get vaccinated. Now, there's going to be blowback. There's going to be an uproar. Guys don't want to do it, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, if I'm the team, I'm like, listen, we're here to win. We have to have a common goal. We have to limit distractions. Whatever your personal feelings may be about the vaccine, you have to understand the gauntlet has been laid down. If you don't get vaccinated and you get COVID and it spreads to this team, we might lose a game, and there's only 17 games available. And the coaches are going to say, perhaps, hey, if you don't get vaccinated, we're cutting you from the team. So you need people who need to be persuaded sometimes. This is a hell of a way to persuade somebody. This is your livelihood. And if you don't like it, fine. Go find another job. Otherwise, you have to get the needle in the arm so we can get back to normal.
What's amazing for me is the fact that it's the NFL who's doing it. The worldwide leader in professional sports. They are the sports juggernaut. And so much of what the NFL does, other sports leagues are going to do too. Like they really are setting a precedent here, aren't they?
100%, Patty, because now the other leagues can say, hey, look, the NFL did it. They're the king of them all. And if they're going to force the players, we can do it too. Listen, there's no doubt they're doing this without looking at everything on the major level of what could be the discrimination be. Meaning, could they get sued for this? Is there labor cases? Can you go to the Supreme Court? All that kind of stuff, right? You don't make this kind of pronouncement without looking into all the different permutations and all the blowback. So clearly, whatever the Players Association will do, whatever players get upset about it, oh, I'm going to sue you, or I'm not going to do it. No, like, they've looked into this. So they've got authority here. And before, if you'd asked me, Pat, I would have said, I don't know if employees have the kind of clout and the juice to do this. But the NFL, the fact they're doing it, though, means it's enforceable, and it means exactly what you're pointing to. Every other league will follow suit now. So I won't be surprised when Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, hey, listen, if you get vaccinated, you can't play. Figure it out. It's your choice.
Last one for you, and it's a two-parter. First, what's going on in Cinephile? The second one is I'm excited for it. I can't wait for it to come out, and that is Stillwater next Friday. And also your thoughts on the new Nick Cage Pig movie.
So I can't wait to see Pig. At first I heard about it, and I go, okay, some sort of strange Nicolas Cage movie. Okay, whatever. I mean, I appreciate the fact he's eccentric. I've interviewed him before, former guest in Cinephile. He was wonderful, by the way. Very gracious, sunglasses on the whole time. It was in Sundance Film Festival in Utah. And previously, somebody had annoyed him because they had asked him something about his finances, which at the time there was a headline that he'd spent millions of dollars for a dinosaur skull and all the rest of it. So I wasn't sure what kind of mood he was going to be in, but he was awesome because I brought up Bringing Out the Dead, which I told him was incredibly underrated, Scorsese movie, and he immediately lit up. He was like, oh, man, no one's mentioned that to me in a while. I love that film. And then I talked about Adaptation, which is one of my favorite comedies. Nicolas Cage plays both roles in that movie. So I think if you look at his best movies, Adaptation, Bringing Up the Dead, he won an Oscar for Leaving Las Vegas, The Rock. I mean, he's been lots of different genres, and he's always entertaining. Now, does he make some Nicolas Cage choices a little bit foolish, a little bit silly? Of course he does. But Pig has gotten rave reviews. 97% on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics who say it is an outstanding performance from Nicolas Cage, and it's less Nicolas Cagean, meaning a little more subtle, a little more tamped down. So I will see Pig this Saturday after my shift to MLB Network. I wasn't going to be swayed in, but the reviews have been so good. And you mentioned the reviews, Will. Stillwater, I'll say it right now, it's the best movie I've seen of 2021. I went to the preview screening last week in New York. I rarely go to these, but I was really excited to see Stillwater. Free movie, but you got to pay $30 for parking. However, I negated that by getting 99-cent pizza. Yes, you heard that right. 99-cent pizza in Manhattan, 2 slices for $2. So for $32, I got to see a movie, and I got to park in New York, and I had great pizza. And the good news is this: Stillwater is outstanding. It's one of the best films of Matt Damon's career. He gives a tremendous performance. Here's what it's about. He plays a Trump-supporting oil rig man who goes to Paris to visit his daughter who's been imprisoned. Why she is imprisoned, you'll find out as he executes the legal case to try to get her out. It's a crime drama. It's It's forceful. It's stirring. It's topical, the way the rest of the world views Americans. It's politicized, and David is so subtle and so powerful. And the biggest news is it's from Tom McCarthy. Logan knows that name. He's the guy who wrote and directed Spotlight, Academy Award winner. Spotlight, of course, won Best Picture. He also did Win-Win. He was in The Wire, by the way, Patty. He was in season 5. He played the journalist who was accused of plagiarism. So Tom McCarthy's a former actor who's become a great writer-director. As soon as I heard he was involved, I was in, and Matt Damon's in, and it's a brilliant film.
Bye, Verk. Eat More was great. I love that we are kindred soulmates when it comes to chocolate bars, and we'll talk to you next week.
More ways than that.
And more ways than that.
Eat more, buddies. Thanks, boys.
MLB insider Adnan Verk, brought to you by Manning Heights. Work, store, play. Personal and flexible warehouse spaces are still available, but going fast. Customize a storage space or expand your business. Learn more at manningheights.ca.
All right, thanks so much, Paul. Take care, man.
See you, Adam.
You've come a long way since that, huh?
No kidding. Paul Steinberg. Now here we are, kindred soulmates. Will, Pat, logo from the Iconic studio today, powered by Iconic Electric and Controls. Burner Management, it's Iconic. Follow them on Twitter at IconicEC. Logan Gordon up next. Biggest stories of the day. Stay tuned for headlines 5 minutes away on Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
All day long, we do the searching, the editing, the filtering. We find the good stuff, add some opinion, and call it Sportsnet 960 Headlines.
Big Show headlines, brought to you by Hyatt Infinity. Lease the QX50 for 27 months. Just $479 with $32.95 down. Heritage Meadows Road on Luxury Lane.
We have got a lot happening in the hockey world today. A lot. And that is just the start of what I think is going to be an absolutely bonkers week. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the program. 4 o'clock hour is underway and on time. It's Will, it's Pat, and now Logan Gordon's got the biggest stories of the day. It's time for headlines.
Weird definition of on time, but that's okay.
Have you worked with me before?
Yeah, look, I get it, but I'm just saying it's not exactly correct. Anyways.
Oh, are you the master of timing?
Yeah, maybe I am.
I'm just saying, like, you know, those who
Grow up.
shouldn't throw stones.
Grow up, Pat.
Logo.
Get out of here. By the way.
We have a trade to announce.
Yeah, we got a couple trades to announce. We'll start, obviously, in Calgary. The first trade made in the history of the Seattle Kraken will go down with the Calgary Flames after selecting Tyler Pitlick from the Arizona Coyotes. They have flipped him to Calgary today in exchange for a 2022 fourth-round pick. Pitlick, 29 years old, had 11 points in 38 games last year with the Coyotes. He joined us a little bit earlier on the show today and said that looking forward to playing under Daryl Sutter. What he knows about him, he likes hardworking guys, and Pitlick says he fits that mold.
I know that he likes the hard-working guys, and I think that's going to bode well for me because that's me. I'm going to work hard and bring it every night, so I think that's going to be good for me.
Pat, it sounds as though the Flames will head into next season with a couple of their bottom 6 guys heading elsewhere, either to Europe or to NHL free agency, so Pitlick fills a role there. Also, this is the only trade the Seattle Kraken have made today. We were wondering if some of these side deals or other trades might come. Just this one with Calgary.
Yeah, there were no, Gordon Miller had a good tweet kind of explaining the difference between, draft incentive deals and side deals. This is what was called a side deal. We'll pick player A and flip him to your team, so on and so forth, and that's exactly what we're talking about here, but this is the only one. Now, when it comes to the trade itself, I don't mind this at all for the Flames. In fact, I think it's a pretty solid addition. I know there are some who do not like it, but I take a look at what the analytics tell me, what the metrics tell me, what different people around the league tell me about Pitlick. We're talking about a very, very strong defensive winger. When I tweeted it out, I called him a center. He is listed as a center in the NHL, but he has predominantly played on the right wing since entering the league. He's had some stints at center, and there's been talk about moving him to center, but he's never played there on a full-time basis in the NHL. But he spends a lot of time starting shifts in the defensive zone and ends them a whole lot more often in the offensive zone. He does a nice job moving the play north, kind of one of those defensive eraser types. Well, you're not expecting a lot of offense from him. You use the not comparison, but you kind of talked about similar roles from Joachim Nordstrom this past season to maybe what Pitlick will fill this year, and I think that's bang on. defensively oriented, defensive specialist winger. Personally, I think one player is an upgrade on the other. I think Pitlick is better at that job than Nordstrom is. People upset at this. Remember how upset people were last year about the Flames going the quote-unquote cheap route for Levo, for Simone, for Nordstrom, and they went out and signed these NHL minimum deals, and they didn't work out. Well, now here they are. They're adding some NHL depth, and it's a whole lot more proven NHL depth that can move the needle, and some people are still upset. I look at this one. It's a 4th-round pick in 2022 for an NHL guy who can be effective in his role. I think it's a solid pickup for the Flames, Will.
Absolutely, and that's kind of where I'm at, too. I mean, you look at this team and what they need. Yeah, obviously they need to have a bigger shakeup than bringing in Tyler Pitlick for a 4th-round pick, and we're all anticipating that will happen. Now, whether that's 1 move, 2 moves, or 3 moves, well, remains to be seen. But they still need to fill out the bottom half of their roster. And this also, I've also saw a lot of this on Twitter today. This does not take away from opportunity for young guys. I don't see that at all. Yes, you want to have guys that have got experience, but just because Tyler Pitlick's on this team does not mean that Adam Ruzicka is now not on this team come October. So I think that the sky is falling type attitude's a little bit silly. Other part of that, too, is why would you give up? 4th-round pick has like a 10% chance of making the NHL. Like, everybody settle down. Not really that big of an acquisition to give up in this deal, for me anyways.
So that was one of the 3 trades made today, at least so far. The other deal sees former Flyer Shane Gostisbehere on his way to Arizona, along with a 2nd and 7th round draft pick. In return, the Flyers get cap relief and literally nothing else. It's the second time they've done one of these deals this offseason, the other one being acquiring Andrew Ladd and a number of draft picks from the New York Islanders a little bit earlier on. And then a bit of a strange one between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Detroit Red Wings that sees Alexander Nedeljkovic dealt to the Red Wings in exchange for the rights to Jonathan Bernier and a 3rd-round pick. Everyone's, it must have been an expensive number. There's no way Carolina could have signed him. Detroit subsequently signs him to a 2-year deal at $3 million per season.
That is outrageous!
What? Carolina, what are you doing here? Your young goaltender giving up to Detroit in exchange for a 3rd-round pick in Bernier for the expensive cost, Will, of $3 million per season?
Yeah, and man, it's a lot of people shaking their heads about this deal. You wonder about this future for Nedeljkovic in Carolina. He looked like the guy. And yeah, I think there was some concerns about their arbitration number. They had said as much themselves, but this is a deal that just makes too much sense for the Red Wings, and they now have a goaltender that might not be their future guy, Pat, but a 2-year deal is going to give you a damn good sample size to find out whether or not he is your guy. The best part of this entire deal, here's Steve Yzerman with the media today when asked about acquiring Nedeljkovic.
How did that all come about? Because people in the hockey world are all looking at this going, what was Carolina thinking letting a Calder finalist go?
Well, that's you'd have to ask them why they were comfortable doing that. I don't know. For us, we had a decision to make. We had Jonathan Bernier obviously here was a pending UFA, and then again had some discussions with Carolina regarding Alex. And for us, again, it's a chance to get a younger goaltender. The kids that we have in our system are probably a ways off from playing in the NHL, and we thought this was a good with Thomas Greiss under contract for 1 more season. Tried to bring in a younger goaltender that has some upside and that has potential to be our starter for a number of years. So he's relatively inexperienced at the NHL level, but we think he's got real good potential and has a chance to play for us for a number of years.
Now, it is a bit of a gamble, Pat, because, yes, he had a very good season last year, but really that's the only time he's had in the NHL. 23 games was a Calder Trophy finalist in the shortened 60-game season, or 56-game season. 15-5-3, 932 save percentage, 3 shutouts, and a 1.90 goals against average. Played behind a very good team in Carolina. All those will be factors. The team will significantly be worse in Detroit. It is a bit of a rolling of the dice, but as Steve just talked about in that clip, their guys in their system were years away from being in the NHL. Bernier had already expressed his desire to go to the free agent market, so they make the move for a third-round pick and the rights to Jonathan Bernier, who may or may not sign in Carolina. If he's going to tell Detroit he's testing the market, I'm not sure why he would sign in Carolina, but that remains to be seen. Either way, Steve Yzerman's done a lot of smart things as a GM, and I'd classify that as a smart thing.
This is a really nice play for the future. We're talking about a guy who's 25 years old and is a potential goalie for them for the next 6-7 years in Detroit. Not a surefire thing, but if you're the Red Wings, you're not expecting to be back to prominence next year or the year after. This is a long game play for Steve Yzerman, who has had his eye on the long game prize for a long time. I like this acquisition. Of Carolina's goaltending options, he's the youngest, he has the highest ceiling, he has the most promise. Now, maybe they have another target in mind that we don't know about, but this one seems really strange on the surface to essentially only get a third-round pick back for a guy that you had control over and a guy that was trending in a really good direction. 932 save percentage in the regular season, 920 in the playoffs. I know that it is early, and we have seen plenty of goalies fall completely off cliffs, but his AHL numbers have certainly been pretty strong and have been trending in the right direction. At the very least, keeping him in the fold, even with a potential big arbitration award, seemed like smart business for the Hurricanes. This seems like a risk for Carolina to me. Maybe he doesn't go to Detroit and end up being their goalie of the future, but it seems like a real risk for the Hurricanes for a guy they drafted, a guy they developed, and a guy who was trending in the right direction to then all of a sudden be looking at an RFA negotiation with arbitration potentially, not even for sure, but potentially involved, and they trade him for a third-round pick. This one is a big-time head-scratcher for me.
So those are the trades today. We also do have a couple of signings. According to TSN's Darren Dreger, the Bruins and Taylor Hall close to a 4-year deal that would see him paid just over $6 million per season. Mike Smith, we got this report yesterday, confirmation today, 2-year deal with the Oilers, just about a $2.2 million AAV. And Barclay Goodrow signing up with the New York Rangers after they acquired his rights earlier this offseason. That one, a 6-year, $3.6 million AAV. Frank Saravelli of Daily Faceoff was on Writer's Block on Sportsnet 590 today and said, if there's anybody who's happy about that deal heading into free agency, it's one of Goodrow's former Tampa line mates.
I watched the Barclay Goodrow signing with the New York Rangers, 6 times 3.65. And I can tell you that the only person happier than Barclay Goodrow in that moment was his line mate and teammate and 2-time champion Blake Coleman. For instance, it seems like if Barclay Goodrow is at 6 times 3.65, that Blake Coleman, for instance, is at 6 times 5.
Not bad for Blake Coleman. Saravelli saying, as of right now, the free agent to look for, Blake Coleman, 5 years, $6 million, around that range is what he says there. Pretty big when it comes to free agency coming up in less than a week now, Pat.
Yeah, I like the Barclay Goodrow signing in New York. I like the cap number. I like the player. I just don't know about a 6-year investment in the guy. This guy has come. Here's the Barclay Goodrow story for me. He started as the other Gaudreau, and whenever the Flames and Sharks played in the Pacific Division, it was always like, okay, well, there's the good Gaudreau, and then there's Barclay Goodrow. You're like, okay, who is this guy? Then he gets traded for a first-round pick a few years ago, and you're like, okay, what exactly is Tampa doing here? Then he fits in perfectly with the Lightning, wins 2 Stanley Cups, was a big-time contributor in winning those Stanley Cups, added something that they didn't have and that they needed to get over that hump, and now gets paid in free agency. I like the player. I would be hesitant on a 6-year term. And the other thing that worries me about the Rangers is that as much as New York is building and they have some nice pieces there and they're trying to be competitive again, the New York Rangers are nowhere near as deep or high end as the Tampa Bay Lightning. Gaudreau is a perfect fit on a Lightning team that had all that talent. Now being asked to play a little bit more of a role, I'm a little leery that he's going to have the same type of success with the Rangers. Good for him. Take the money and run. Go to New York City. Have the time of your life. I'm not sitting here saying that I think this is a slam dunk for the Rangers.
It'd be awesome to be on a 6-year deal making that money in Manhattan. Are you kidding me? Barclay Goodrow just won the lottery.
You could give me a whole lot less than that to go live in Manhattan, and I'm saying yes every time.
But yeah, I agree with you. And the other thing, too, for me about the Rangers, Pat, is I feel in a lot of ways they blew it up and had ruined their path by going no disrespect to Chris Drury, but I feel like they had a good thing going, and there was a lot of head scratching when they made the decision to fire both John Davidson and Jeff Gordon. I feel like they're trying to now expedite the process when they had such a good thing going, and I get it. I don't have the ownership money. I'm not paying those bills. I'm not James Dolan, but my goodness, it feels like they're just pivoting here when they didn't really need to pivot just yet.
So trades, signings, you might as well throw a retirement in there as well. Former Columbus Blue Jackets forward and Colorado Avalanche.
All-around good guy.
Matt Calvert retiring after 10 NHL seasons due to injury. The 31-year-old finishes his career with 203 points in 566 games. And should note, we were supposed to be getting an NHL schedule release sometime around 4 o'clock. Sounds like that's been pushed back to 4:30. So as soon as we get those details, we'll pass them along.
Just one thing on Matt Calvert.
Sure.
One of the most engaging and one of the most enjoyable guys to work with I have ever come across in the NHL. It
one
was
of the best
like
interviews.
I would say one of the top 5 best interviews.
Didn't matter
I've
when he's
ever
Columbus
done.
or Colorado. He was great both stops.
He was like that when he was a standout junior in Brandon, had 99 in his final year with the Wheat Kings in that run to the Western League Championship. And this guy, like, every time you'd interview, like, I interviewed him once in Columbus. A couple years later, I interviewed him when he was with Colorado. Remembered my name, shook my hand, like, and it was always something that, as a broadcaster, who you know that these guys don't need to give 2 bleeps about you. I understand where we sit on the pecking order. They've got other things that are more important and should be more important. Interviews and media go with part of the job. This guy was always one of the most enjoyable guys to deal with. And was a hell of an interview. Like, for me, it's him, it's Eric Johnson, it's Cam Fowler. There's 2 or 3 other guys around the league outside of the Flames that I would put on my all-time best. TJ Oshie, all-time best interviews list, and Matt Calvert, 100% one of them. So I just wanted to say that. Hell of a career, and he was a pretty darn effective player for a number of years in the role that he played.
And the other thing, too, is maybe ESPN's getting back at the league for yesterday. Their expansion draft show was ruined. So now it was like, oh, yeah, schedule release at 4. Just kidding. It's at 4:30. Suckers. Supposed to be unveiled live on SportsCenter on ESPN.
So hold on. We're going to give insiders like Friedman and Saravalli and Drager, we're going to give these guys that much time, 10 full hours, to text agents and other sources, and then we're going to be mad when leaks get up. Maybe next time when you go to 33 teams, maybe you'll learn next time.
There won't be more than 32. There shouldn't be anyways.
That's enough for the NHL for now. Gentlemen, move on to the NFL today. And a big story broken by Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network as the NFL continues to push for its players to get vaccinated against COVID-19. Pelissero reporting that any game this season that can't be rescheduled due to a COVID-19 outbreak among unvaccinated players on one of the competing teams will now result in a forfeit by the club responsible for the outbreak. Additionally, all players on both teams involved in a forfeited game won't be paid their salary for that week. If a club cannot play due to a COVID spike in vaccinated individuals, league will attempt to minimize the competitive and economic burden on both participating teams. Now, Pat, the NFL already eased restrictions this season for fully vaccinated players by eliminating daily testing for them. Other changes made for fully vaccinated players included no quarantine following exposure to someone who did test positive and no required physical distancing in team facilities. Additionally, unvaccinated players will still be prohibited from gathering outside of the club facility unless they receive NFL and union approval. According to Judy Batiste of NFL.com, more than 78% of players across the league have had at least one dose of the vaccine, and 14 teams have topped the 85% threshold set by the NFL. But this has caused waves across the league, including for star receiver of the Arizona Cardinals, DeAndre Hopkins, who tweeted out earlier today, quote, "Never thought I would say this, but being put in a position to hurt my team because I don't want to partake in the vaccine is making me question my future in the NFL," end quote. He would delete that tweet later on, but still seems like he's pretty upset about it.
Well,
lots of guys going back and forth on this decision right now.
Did you see? He deleted that initial tweet and then just tweeted
freedom.
Freedom?
Question
with
mark.
A question mark?
Yeah.
Nobody's taking away your freedom. Cole Beasley, DeAndre Hopkins, anybody else who decides not to get a COVID-19 vaccine. That is your constitutional right in that country, in our country. You have free will to choose whether or not to get what I firmly believe, as I've had both my shots, nothing has fallen off. I firmly believe is a scientifically proven safe vaccine. And I trust my family doctor, I trust other doctors, and I trust those who are guiding us. I got my vaccine. I was happy to do so, and I feel very safe right now. Nobody is suggesting that a COVID-19 vaccine is the silver bullet cure-all, and you can't still get it, you can't still transmit it. We have been aware of this all along. But what we do know is that the science is very clear. You have a significantly better chance of being protected from the virus, and you have a massive layer of protection as opposed to not getting it. If you still don't feel comfortable, that is your right. But it's also the NFL's right, or any other business's right, or any other country's right to say that there are going to be restrictions placed or benefits given depending on the decision that you make with your free will. For instance, here at Rogers, we have rules. If you are going abroad, you have to get this vaccine depending on what country you're entering, or that vaccine depending on what country you're entering. Different jobs have different requirements. This is no different. The NFL has done this to keep their players safe, to keep their staff safe, and this is their belief. I have no problem with what the NFL is doing. It has nothing to do with freedom. It has nothing to do with the Constitution. It has to do with an independent enterprise doing what they believe is right for their business will. So I got no problem with it. And so if you don't want to get it, if you don't feel like you're going to get it, then you live with the restrictions. It is what it is. We live with our free will. We live with our decisions. So live with it as opposed to complaining about it. And that would be my rant on the situation.
Don't have a lot to add.
Alrighty, then that's headlines.
Big Show headlines brought to you by Hyatt Infinity. Save up to $18,000 on their selection of executive-driven vehicles. Heritage Meadows Road on Luxury Lane.
And the text line can get mad at us. The text line can get mad at me. I'm not telling you what to do. And I would love to have the conversation. Come on down somewhere. We'll meet and we can chat. I'm not telling you what to do, but I have no problem with what the NFL has decided to do. And I know it's a hot button topic, but this is a sports station. This is a sports league deciding to do something, and I am fully on board with their decision.
It broke on Monday, I believe. It was Tuesday, Logo, when you and I were together. You were obviously not on the air, Pat, but the Ontario Hockey League was the first one to do it. They require anybody who is involved with their league, so billet families are included, players, coaches, scouts, front office members. If you are going to be in the building in the Ontario Hockey League, you have to be vaccinated. And that includes, as I mentioned, billet families. And Alan Walsh, who is a player agent, quote tweeted that announcement from the Ontario Hockey League and said, "It's my understanding it's going to be the same in all three Canadian hockey leagues in junior." So, again, nothing official from the Western League or the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, but they're doing the same thing. And it's their right to do that.
Yep. Matty Rose, up next, Stampeders Report. Lots still to get to as we continue along on a very, very busy Thursday edition of The Big Show. We haven't even talked about Zach Hyman and the Edmonton Oilers yet, which we probably should as well. Stay with us on Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
Streaming now through the Sportsnet mobile app. This is The Big Show. Sportsnet 960 The Fan, Calgary.
Welcome back to the Big Show with Will Knowlton, Pat Steinberg. More from the lads in just a moment. My name's Matt Rose, and it's time for the afternoon Stamps Report as Dave Dickinson, the head coach, continues to try and implement new things to his young offense. The base is set, but now it's time to start adding those Stampeder intricacies, and things scuffled slightly.
Well, I mean, I think it's tough to actually execute without pads. That's how we're going to have to practice the entire season, though. Whoever decided that rule, that's the way it goes. We have to learn how to practice and get better without pads and banging. And that's what we're trying to do. But, it did seem like, obviously, the pass rush, I mean, it's hard when they can just go without really knowing they're going to get anyone putting a shoulder pad on them. So that's probably common in unpadded practices, that tough to run the ball, tough to protect. And you could see that offensively, we didn't have our best, basically our best practice. We've got too much in. They know it. I know it. I'm just trying to give them maybe a little bit of a what if we want to use these type of plays. But we've, the base of the offense is in, and we were sharp on those days. And now we're trying to get fancy, and ultimately it hasn't looked too good in the last few days.
Cuts are due on the 30th, and someone has to take the backup quarterback job still. That's our focus today. Next couple days are going to be big for that position, especially Saturday when they hold their second scrimmage of camp.
The weird thing is it's kind of been give and take. One guy has a real sharp practice, maybe the other two not quite as sharp, and then it switches and it flips. And that's, we're going to do another scrimmage on Saturday to try to see who performs the best when a little bit more pressure, no coaches on the field. And I got to use that big time in this evaluation process. But, as far as knowledge and picking up our system and our language, all three of these guys have a chance. So that's a good thing for us.
Bo Levi Mitchell is going to be the guy, and after a long layoff, expected to be as healthy as ever going into the season. He'll have some new targets at receiver, but that happens every year and to plenty of teams. We also spoke to quarterbacks coach Mark Mueller, and I asked him what he's seen from Bo Levi Mitchell through camp.
Bo is under 200, and I am far from under 200. I noticed that, but Bo is looking. I think he's looking really good in the pocket, and I think anything that as you get older, it's harder to stay fluid and things like that. Things take a little bit longer to warm up and stiffen up on you. I think as long as he's feeling good and he's feeling lighter and more athletic, and whatever he wants to feel good in the pads is good for all of us.
The backup quarterback role for this team is quite defined as a result of having a star pivot. Dave Dickinson laid out what he was looking for in the backup after Thursday's session.
Well, I mean, consistently do your job. Consistently, a fancy play is great. A great play, I'll take it. But if it's two mental errors, or we can't get lined up, or we throw into a team meeting on the other side, sometimes those plays are going to outweigh even a great play. So right now, to be honest, John, it is close. In my mind, I have seen certain guys maybe step forward, and then the next practice I start questioning myself, like, am I seeing it right? So we've definitely got enough quarterbacks in this building as far as coaches, with Huff, myself, and Mules. But it still might be a little bit of a guess because of the no preseason games. So, and I want to give all of them a chance. I know Dakota and Mike have played, but I think Jake has shown that he can compete with them. And I just got to take into account he hasn't had live game action, and it probably should be a little bit behind. And yet I feel like he's right there with the other two guys.
Dakota Prukop, the elder statesman, he's 27 and an Oregon grad. Michael O'Connor, the Canadian of the group, 25 years old and a product of UBC. Finally, Jake Meyer enters the picture at the age of 24, a grad of UC Davis. Quarterback coach Mark Mueller likes the battle so far.
And the guys have put in lots of time, not only in the past, however long they've been here, 14 weeks, part of it, or 14 days, part of it feels like 14 weeks because we've been on Zoom with these guys for so long. But I think all of them are improving each day. If they have a setback in one period, they get better in the next one. We got lots of stuff in, which is good. I think those guys are handling the information and the different types of verbiage and the why of the plays. But I think all those guys are right in the thick of things. And we, luckily we have, another week for one of those guys to grab that brass ring and then make the decision for us.
He laid out what each one brings to the table as they all offer something a little bit different, a little bit of a different skill set.
Yeah, I think all of them function the way that we want a quarterback to function. Just after that solid base, they do something a bit different than the other guys. Dakota can move and create. He's an incredible athlete, like a 40-inch vertical type guy, a super muscular guy. And Mike is that, like you said, the prototypical in the pocket, can move within the pocket, stands tall. He's nice and he's tall. He can see over the line. And Jake does really well in the pocket. He can move back and forth. So they're all really highly functional for us. They're doing what we want them to do. And then they just have their extra flavor, which I think makes all of us better.
We also heard from Jake Meyer and Michael O'Connor, and they were asked about their biggest takeaways from being around Bo Levi Mitchell by John Hodge of 3 Down Nation, with Meyer answering before O'Connor.
He never panics. I'd say he's always calm and collected, and no matter what the outcome is or no matter what the situation is. So that's something I've kind of taken from him is always be in control, and no situation's too big. So just stay in control, keep the team calm, and lead the offense out there.
I think the biggest thing for me would be just his overall poise and confidence. And, that rubs off on other guys. You could just see, like, when he's in the huddle, he's got all eyes on him and they're fully attentive. And they believe, just based off of his confidence and his poise and his swagger, that, we're going to execute and compete at a high level. So I just think, taking some of those traits from Bo has been really cool to see. Just the overall leadership and command that he has with this team.
Saturday is a closed scrimmage in the afternoon. Cuts are due 6 days later, so that'll be a big test for the backup QBs. One last note, as it has been discussed plenty on our station today, Dave Dickinson returned to Calgary in 2008, wrapped up his playing career, and made the transition to the Stampeders coaching staff. Around the same time, a 25-year-old Mark Giordano was returned from Russia and began his second full NHL season with the Flames. Over the next 12 years, both Coach Dickinson and Giordano were mainstays in their respective sport, but also in the community. And I asked Dave Dickinson about his run-in with Mark over the past.
Listen, I felt bad when he left, but maybe it's the best thing for him. I don't know that. The one guy, when I first started, Jerome McGinley was the star in the city, and I thought he gave us, his full attention and enjoyed being around the football guys, and loved him as a role model and what he did for this city. And then when I came back, to me, that guy's been Gio. When we go to the same events, most of the time, he's the one reaching out to us and asking about our season, very interested, community-oriented, but just a hell of a player. He's only a year removed from the Norris, but I understand decisions had to be made. I don't envy both Tree on that and Coach Sutter, but, I just wish him well. I think Seattle's a cool city. I spent 3 weeks there. I would have liked to play for the Seahawks. Didn't happen, but still was tough. To be honest, it was tough. We got our own Gio over here in the equipment room. We never want to see him leave, and I have to admit, I never really want to see Gio leave Calgary. So hopefully he did enough and hear that when it's all said and done, he'll come back and get recognized, and sorry to have him leave.
With your Stamps Report, I'm Matt Rose.
Thank you, Matty. Matty will be a big part of our draft coverage coming up tomorrow and Saturday as well. And the Stamps getting closer and closer to kicking off their season. We're only a few weeks away now from the start of the 2021 CFL season. Alongside Will Knowlton, Logan Gordon, my name is Pat Steinberg. The Big Show live in the Iconic studio, powered by Iconic Electric and Controls. Instrumentation, it's iconic. Visit iconicec.ca to find out more. The Flames have released their 21-22 NHL schedule. We'll dive into that and plenty more around the NHL when we come back. This is The Big Show on Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
You're locked on to The Big Show, Calgary sports talk in the afternoon. Okay, smart speaker, play Sportsnet 960.
Okay, let's read every game with the date and make you retain it right now. The Calgary Flames will open the... Can you imagine if we did that? Just an absolute time killer. And then on December 23rd, they play. 4 days later, they'll play. The Calgary Flames have announced their schedule. Welcome back to the program. Alongside Will, I'm Pat. So we know the Flames will open their regular season in what looks like a normal 21-22 season. At least the schedule looks normal. On October 16th on the road in Edmonton. They will return home for their home opener at the Scotiabank Saddledome 2 nights later against the Anaheim Ducks, and then immediately set off on a 5-game road trip to the Eastern Conference: Detroit, Washington, New York, New Jersey, and Pittsburgh. Some of the things that stick out from this schedule, first and foremost, this is not a Flames thing. This is an NHL thing. But the first thing that stuck out to me, Will, I looked at him and said, the final game of the season is April 29th on the road in Winnipeg. They're not starting that much later. Why are they ending so much later? The reason would be There's a big break in February for something.
Yeah, I said to you off the air, I was like, man, it's weird that they're having an all-star break and an Olympic break. But as you pointed out, first year for the rights nationally that have changed hands south of the border. It is now ESPN's rights as opposed to NBC. And as far as we understand it, ESPN said, no, we'd still like an all-star break. So the all-star break is going to be February 4th and 5th, I guess the all-star game and festivities, 4th and 5th. And then right after that, obviously, just by timing-wise, is going to be the Olympic break. So I'm sure there's some players that are going to love that because they probably is a very good chance you won't be an all-star or an Olympian if you're not going to either. Have a fairly decent amount of time to go on vacation, perhaps with your family. But yes, the Calgary Flames will not play between the dates of February 2nd and February 24th.
And they'll go almost a full month between home games at the Scotiabank Saddledome. Their final home game before the Olympic break is January 29th against Vancouver. Their next home game isn't until February 26th against Minnesota. They've got a heavy home schedule in March. A lot of longer road trips at the first part of the season. They've got a 5-game road trip in October and a 7-game road trip in the Eastern Conference in the month of November. So, look, schedules are what they are. You're not going to spend too much time on them, but it's always exciting when you get a schedule. And I will say, last year's schedule release when it came out in January was cool. It was interesting. And to see Ottawa, you're like, okay, I've never seen that before. We lived through that. We had our 56-game season playing only against 6 other teams and the baseball-style schedule. I'm ready to go back to this. I'm ready to go back to long road trips that have different spots on them. It's going to feel like a normal season, I think, starting in October. The season doesn't start for the Flames until October 16th, so they've got a pretty significant break between when their preseason comes to an end and when their regular season starts. Their preseason finale is October 8th, more than a week between the preseason and the start of the regular season for the Calgary Flames. It's up online. You can find it on sportsnet.ca. It's on Twitter. It's on the Flames website. The schedule has been announced.
I don't know if you mentioned it. I apologize if you did, just because I'm sure a lot of people are curious. Giordano will make his return.
Oh, I did not mention that. No.
Mark Giordano is back at the Scotiabank Saddledome if he stays on the Seattle Kraken, which I think we all anticipate he will now that he was there yesterday in uniform. But Mark Giordano makes his return to the Dome on December 23rd, the final game before Christmas. A nice gift for Jordy McLeod and the crew at the Dome because they can make that thing pretty special. And as has been noted on Twitter already today, I put that on Twitter, and some people have been like, oh, well, ticket prices are now through the roof probably for that game, which, there's a good chance of that. But, yes, Giordano and the Kraken, not only is it the return of the Dome, but it's the first game in the regular season between the two teams. So historic in a lot of ways. But yes, Mark Giordano is back in Calgary as a visitor the final game before Christmas.
Surprised that Wedley hasn't texted in for this as of yet.
And then the New Year's Eve game this year is the 31st.
Yep.
Once again, bang on the New Year's Eve game for I'm not quite sure, 100th consecutive year, perhaps 2021st consecutive year. New Year's Eve will indeed be on the 31st of December. The New Year's Eve opponent on December 31st is the Winnipeg Jets. Winnipeg will be at the Scotiabank Saddledome for the traditional New Year's Eve game, which, again...
And then the New Year's Eve game this year is the 31st.
The best part about that clip just keeps on rolling.
The first Battle of
Doesn't
Alberta
even notice.
November 17th.
Yeah, okay, cool, right on.
Which is kind of similar to this clip, which, again, just kept on rolling.
In the NHL today. He's Pat, I'm Will, the spirit of giving.
Like, did not even
11th.
recognize it.
Number 11th. Yeah, that's another good one.
Oh, good times. One thing we have not talked about a lot today is the Zach Hyman deal in Edmonton. So the Oilers have been a very busy team. Ken Holland is not screwing around, and he's trying to make the Oilers better. The problem is it's hard to convince me that Ken Holland is making the Oilers better. So they go out and they acquire Duncan Keith. They give up quite a lot to bring in Duncan Keith and that sizable cap hit. I don't know if you knew this or not, Will, but no salary retained in the Duncan Keith deal. On top of that, they have re-signed Mike Smith. Not surprised by that. $2.2 million cap hit for Mike Smith on a 2-year deal. And now...
What?
Yeah, $2.2 million for Smitty. And now a potential 7 or 8 year deal for Zach Hyman to bring him into the fold, plus still negotiating on bringing back Tyson Barrie. Now, on the surface, a 7-8 year deal for a 29-year-old Zach Hyman, as good as he is, and I think is a very, very good player, and I think will actually be a pretty strong fit in Edmonton. I do not like a 7 or 8 year term for a guy like that. It reminds me a lot of some of the other deals the Oilers have signed in free agency, a la Milan Lucic, and a few others that would come to mind. But you did make a really interesting point when we briefly touched on this, is that if you're the Oilers, if you're Daryl Cates, if you're ownership, you take a look at how much is left on contracts for Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, you've kind of set yourself a window, and I don't even know if it's the full length of those deals. If you're trying to keep these guys career Oilers, it's time to win. It's time to not get swept in the playoffs. It's time to be there every year. And I'm not suggesting that they have taken a huge step towards that, but at least on the Zach Hyman deal, you can see why ownership would be like, okay, yeah, well, 7 years, whatever. We're worried about the first 3 or 4 years for Zach Hyman. Not defending it, but I think that's kind of what the Oilers are aiming at here.
Well, and the best part is, all you heard Oilers fans talk about this offseason was, they've got cap space, look out, Oilers are coming. Well, there goes that cap space. Zach Hyman signing will likely bring that cap space below $5 million.
Yeah, because we're talking about over $5 million on the reported cap hit.
And their cap space right now, according to Cap Friendly, is just over $9.004 million left in cap space. So, it's very confusing. This is a team that very much needed some improvements. You've come back with a defense that, albeit is going to struggle at 5-on-5. Tyson Barrie had a great season. He's great for that power play, but I also think that, Pat, they would have been just fine with Darnell Nurse quarterbacking that top power play unit. So Tyson Barrie, outside of that, gives you very little at 5-on-5. Philip Broberg, don't think he's ready for the NHL. Evan Bouchard certainly has not played a ton in the NHL. And Chris Russell, for what he has been for that team, yes, very good, but now getting older and at one season left at the age of 34, who knows what he's going to be. So a lot of questions there. And again, for all the criticism of their lack of depth, it essentially right now looks like they're bringing back almost the exact same team, certainly the same team in those depth spots, most notably the bottom 6 up front, and certainly on the bottom couple pairings on defense. And in goal, I think they're going to be fine in the opening year for Mike Smith. I don't think he's going to be as good as he was last season, because that was his first good year in, 5, 6, 7 seasons. But, you had to give him term, I'm sure, for him to come back and to be comfortable. I'm not sure if you can confirm this or if you have any knowledge on it, Pat, but, his family's still living in Calgary. I don't think he saw them at all last season. I don't know if he's going to move them to Edmonton now with a 2-year term, but that probably factors into giving that guy 2 years. And as for the Zach Hyman signing, the only good piece there, or good news for me anyways, is that, okay, yeah, it probably hurts to go on a 7 or 8 year term, but realistically, it's a 5-year term because that's what's left on McDavid's contract, and that's kind of what you're trying to build this team at, is what you can do with Connor's remaining 5 years. So at that point, the final 2-3 seasons on Zach Hyman's deal, you're probably not all that worried about it. And you had to go that long to get the AAV that low, I would think. And as we've talked about, whether it's Edmonton, even in Calgary, certainly in Winnipeg, in these middle Canadian markets, you have to give either a lot of term or a lot of money to get players to sign there. And that was the case certainly with Zach Hyman.
It felt for a little while there like teams had learned their lesson in free agency. I get it. To your point, you have to pay a premium in unrestricted